in a moment. Yes. All right, here we are. So welcome to this evening's joint work session with the West Salem Business District Urban Renewal Advisory Board and the Salem City Council for January 26, 2015. So I would like the counselors and then the agency advisory board members to introduce themselves, and we'll start with member Chuck Bennett. Hi, Chuck.
Good evening, Mayor.
Okay.
My name is Chuck Bennett. I represent Ward 1.
My name is Tom Anderson. I represent Ward 2, which pushes Pasture Park to the freeway.
Brad Namke, representing Ward 3.
Hi, Steve McCoy, Ward 4, Far South Salem.
Daniel Benjamin, Ward 6, Northeast Salem.
Ward Bernards, Ward 7.
Jim Lewis, the real Ward 8.
E.M. Easterly, resident of West Salem. I happen to live in Ward 8. Not everyone in West Salem does. And a member of the advisory board for a very short duration, I believe.
Okay, all right.
Lance Donnelly, I'm a resident and business owner in West Salem.
Right there.
My name is Nicholas Bondog-Lynn. I think I'm a member at large. I have no idea.
Okay.
Dwayne Hilty. I live in the Urban Development District in West Salem.
I'm Chris Fisher. I'm the chair of the advisory board committee.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. So tonight we do have this special meeting for this joint meeting, and we are going to have our project manager, Annie Gorski, provide the work session presentation to you. Welcome, Ms. Gorski. Thank you for being here.
I think we're just going to dim the lights so you can see the screen a little bit better.
All right.
So good evening. My name is Annie Gorski. I'm a project manager in the city's urban development department. I'm also here. I'd also like to introduce a couple of other folks that are here with us tonight. Dave Siegel, who's on our consultant team from Leland Consulting. Scott Manser, who's on our consultant team from DKS. They're the transportation consultant. And then we have staff from Public Works and from Community Development that are also working with us on the project. We began work on the Business District Action Plan 1 year ago. Tonight we're here to give you an update on the progress. This is a figure that shows the boundary of the West Salem Urban Renewal Area. The yellow here is the boundary. The bubbles in blue show the focus of the Business District study. And as you'll see, this study maintains the importance, or recognizes Edgewater 2nd Street area is still a focus, but really shifts the importance to this area on the east side of Patterson Street. In terms of the scope, the Business District recommendations will help us prioritize future West Salem urban renewal investments by identifying projects and partnerships that can be implemented over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. In 2018, this urban renewal area will have capacity to bond for larger projects. Action plan recommendations will be informed by community input, including from a stakeholder and a technical advisory committee. Both of these groups have met to review preliminary findings and have had one public open house so far. More outreach is planned. The stakeholder committees include representatives from ODOT, Chariots, and representatives from the Business Association and the Neighborhood Association. Thus far, we've completed a market assessment, a hotel feasibility study, and transportation analysis. And we've conducted interviews with property owners and businesses in the area. What we've learned so far is that attracting a new hotel to the area is a long-term strategy. There are opportunities for more retail and services in the area. Many residents continue to cross the bridge to access services and shopping. The data shows that there's a strong demand for more housing in the area, including condominiums and townhomes. And there's a strong demand for more food and metals cluster, larger in the area, and to strengthen the employment in the area. The Business District recommendations are broken into 3 districts, and those are shown here. There's a map that I'll show you on the next slide that shows those areas. The transportation analysis that was done evaluated 6 alternatives for their effectiveness in improving connectivity on the east side of Patterson Street, including traveling north on Wallace from Edgewater Street. And one of the figures that you have in front of you, the colorful one, shows those alternatives in more detail. This analysis showed that one alternative, an undercrossing of Wallace Road in the vicinity of 2nd Street, provided the greatest benefit for cars, trucks, pedestrians, and bicycles. I'll discuss this more in a later slide. This is a figure showing the conceptual districts. Each of the areas within the business district have unique needs and opportunities, including what we're referring to as the Western Gateway. This area here where the Oak Hills Shopping Center is located, the Edgewater 2nd Street area, which we refer to as the Main Street, and the Employment Center, this area on the east side of Wallace from Patterson to Wallace Road. And then the Town Center, this is something that you'll see is one of the longer term strategies, but this refers to the area on the east side of Wallace Road. In terms of the preliminary recommendations, one of the key findings is to encourage more mixed-use districts where feasible within the area, including more housing where possible, particularly on the east side of Wallace Road. Another recommendation refers to creating an employment center, or employment campus rather, in the area between Patterson and Wallace, and increasing employment density by attracting new businesses to the area and encouraging existing businesses to expand. Another strategy for increasing density is to attract craft industrial uses to the area between Wallace and Patterson, which we're calling the Employment Center. That may be a new term to you. We've had much discussion about this, but craft industrial refers generally to lighter manufacturing uses that also have a retail component, such as a cheese maker that also has a storefront, or a furniture maker that may also sell furniture with a storefront, or a brewery or winery with a tasting room. Some of the vacant and industrial buildings in the Employment Center may be well suited for this. In some cases, this type of use may already be allowed in the existing industrial and commercial zones in the area, but we're working with community development and our consultant team to do more research, and we expect to bring more information back to you in the spring, likely with another work session, including ways of how to encourage these types of uses in the district. And finally, as I mentioned, recommendations to improve transportation connectivity are focused on the area east of Patterson Street. This is a figure that shows the transportation improvements that are recommended. The dotted purple here on both sides of Wallace, are shown on both sides of Wallace Road, refer to proposed or potential rather new street connections. The areas with the yellow are areas where we might add streetscape standards or design standards rather, or other tools to encourage more active storefronts as redevelopment occurs. Those are shown here along 2nd Street or possibly along Glen Creek. One of the big ideas coming out of the action plan is a potential undercrossing of Wallace Road in the vicinity of 2nd Street, and that's this area here. As shown here, improvements are also recommended on 2nd between Patterson and Wallace Road. This portion of 2nd Street is currently unimproved. The undercrossing at Wallace and 2nd may be something that the agency board may want to target funding for in the near to medium term, while the majority of the street improvements on this side of Wallace Road may be things that happen as development occurs. This is a figure that shows the potential undercrossing of 2nd of Wallace Road in more detail. The proposal is for a new two-way road section. I'm not sure why the slides are just moving, but I apologize. This proposal is for a new two-way road section with capacity for cars, trucks, buses, along with a traffic-separated path for pedestrians and bicycles. The yellow marking here in the top right shows that undercrossing location, and it also shows how that may connect either at Cornucopia or Bassett. Those are existing streets that where improvements would need to be made, but ultimately that would be how someone would travel north or reach Glen Creek Road and then ultimately Wallace to travel north. That is one of the concerns or issues that we've been trying to address or evaluating through this study, how to travel from the Edgewater 2nd Street district to go north on Wallace. So this would address that solution. The example here shown with the photo on the left is of the Wilsonville interchange. As you'll see, the figure here shows an open, welcoming feel. I think if this is pursued, this is the type of look and feel we would want to see here with the undercrossing. We would like to work with students from the University of Oregon, architectural students, to prepare conceptual renderings that convey the look and feel, and to research other case studies from around the country and to use that in our next round of outreach and to get feedback on that. On the agency board agenda tonight is a staff report seeking approval to fund that work, which is less than $10,000. In terms of next steps, our focus for this spring will be more outreach and to work with Leland and DKS to generate cost estimates and potential phasing for some of the recommendations. We'll be sending out a postcard to businesses and property owners in the area, and we'll be scheduling additional meetings with our advisory committees and with the public. By late spring, we expect to have draft recommendations and phasing for short, medium, and long-term projects, and anticipate scheduling another work session with this group to walk through and share those recommendations with you. By June, we expect to have a final report and to bring that forward to you for your review. In the next round of outreach, these are some of the questions that I think we'd like to focus the outreach on. And I guess we'd like to know if these are the right questions for the community, really focusing on what are the short, medium, and long-term priorities, or what should those be. You know, how could the Urban Renewal Agency encourage new craft industrial uses? What planning and zoning tools should be used to encourage some of the recommendations? And what transportation improvements should or could be prioritized? And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions and also reiterate that we have staff and a consultant team here to assist. And there is certainly more information available on the project webpage, which is listed there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation and the handouts. Counselors, just for your information, particularly for those who are new, if you'll direct your presence to me, and then I'll call on you so that I don't have you tripping over one another, and we'll try to be sure that whichever staff has the best answer for you is the one that we eventually get to hear from. So are there questions from counselors and from the advisory board members? Yes, Member Anderson.
Thank you. I guess I don't need to say thank you, Madam Mayor. I should say thank you.
It's fine.
Okay, but you some other title you have here today, do you not?
It's fine.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
That's good. That works.
I've got a number of questions, and I first want to ask, what is metals? You talked about something and metals. Is that metal industries or?
I apologize. We tend to use terminology that we're used to, right? We have to remember that's not always clear. I was referring to the metal manufacturing cluster.
Okay,
there are
okay.
a number of companies, Leighton Manufacturing.
I understand that now. I've been through that neighborhood. I used to ride my bike to the swimming pool there when the swimming pool used to be open. I want to talk a little bit about, or ask some questions about the transportation angle of it. It seems to me that in earlier studies, one of the ways to reduce the congestion on Wallace Road was to make some improvements to Marine Drive. Is that still the case? And I'm talking about that now independently of whatever might happen with the fourth bridge. So is that still the case? Is that still on the plan?
I would call on Julie and Scott to be available to help fill in, but in general, I didn't mention the Salem River crossing in my presentation, but in general, this study is is consistent, or I should say, is aware of the Salem River crossing work that's being done and is part of that Marine Drive and the proposed Marine Drive. I would just maybe back up to show you a figure here that shows here for the transportation. This blue here is the proposed future Marine Drive, and I guess we're showing that there because that is why it's doing that. But
Well, my question is independently of the
Okay.
any potential new bridge. In 1997, wasn't it recognized that Wallace Road was a problem and fixing Marine Drive was a possible way to go?
Yes, Counselor, my name is Julie Warnicki, Transportation Planning Manager with the Public Works Department. And yes, Marine Drive was identified as part of the Wallace Road Local Access and Circulation Study in the late 1990s. It was adopted into the Salem Transportation System Plan as a one means of helping to relieve traffic onto Wallace Road. It still performs, it will still perform that function, or is intended to, with this plan, and also with the independent of the bridge plan. The local street circulation is also something that was enhanced as a result of that study, including the construction of Taggart and Bartell. So this plan here is saying that maybe some more local street connections would help to provide that circulation off of the state highway.
Well, Julie, did the 2008 bond, didn't it, one of the projects that was potentially to be done with those bond money was getting right-of-way on Wallace Road and making some not Wallace Road, getting right-of-way on Marine Drive and making some improvements there?
One of the projects in the bond measure was for acquisition for right-of-way for the bridge and or surface road approaches, including Marine Drive, and that funding is still available. It is still in the budget and is waiting on decision for the third bridge study,
Okay,
or the
well,
Salem River crossing.
but even if there is no third bridge, the recommendation was to fix Marine Drive.
Yes, Marine Drive was part of that discussion.
Okay, but nothing has been done on Marine Drive yet.
There has been some development driven right-of-way dedications for Marine Drive. There has not been anything done with those bond funds in particular.
Okay, and the city hasn't purchased any of the right-of-way?
No, the city has not purchased any of the right-of-way. Some has been dedicated, though.
Okay. May I continue, or?
You may, but let me see if others have
Sure,
questions
sure.
first, just out of courtesy
That's
for
fine.
the time. Questions from other advisory board members and counselors? Councilor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a real quick one. In regards to this potential second street undercrossing, it's always good to see a photo from kind of where it would be so you can kind of see topography. Is there a natural tendency for one to view an underpass on that, or is it essentially just going to be excavation with and where will the stormwater from that low go straight to the river, or?
part of that, there's still some engineering work that needs to occur. Those details have yet to be determined. So right now it's a proposal. It could be Second Street or in that vicinity. But given the alignment with the Union Street Railroad Bridge and the fact that the city acquired additional right-of-way than was needed for the bridge, in that vicinity, it seems like a likely possibility.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Bednar.
Thank you. It's nice to see this committee here today. It's one that was near and dear to my heart, as I was once chair of it as well, and I'm well versed in what's going on. I also want to say that Councilor Lewis and I attended the last meeting of the West Rab, just so that we were up to date a little bit more than other people would be, I guess, at this point. We got some of the details sitting there for an hour and a half and able to contribute at this point. My comment, if there is any that I really want to make, is to make sure that whatever projects that you go forward with on the transportation infrastructure, that it is centered around economic development. It needs to be market driven from my point of view, rather than what's the underpass, what's going underneath Wallace Road, what does it produce? It does produce some connectivity, because you have a hard time getting from one side to the other, but is that the biggest bang for your buck when you're out there looking at different projects? Thank you.
Did I see someone else's hand up? All right. Member Anderson, then. We'll go back to your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Didn't the 1997 study also recommended some sort of median on Wallace Road from Edgewater to Glen Creek?
Julie?
Yes, the recommendations for access management along Wallace Road were recommended as part of that and are included in the city's adopted transportation system plan today. That is an ODOT facility. We have talked over time with ODOT about that, but that has not proceeded to implementation, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, is ODOT against it, or you just haven't reached that stage in the discussions?
I don't think I can speak for ODOT, and so they're
Well,
not here today.
I was not asking you for ODOT. I was asking what your impression of ODOT was.
My impression is that they're not necessarily against it, but they're also not out there pushing it.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I have to tell you, I just looked at I scanned this underpass thing. I didn't peruse it, and I thought until I got here tonight and really looked at it that it was just for bicycles at the end of the Union Street Bridge, because that's a horrible way. You know, you come out there and you're thrust into 6 lanes of traffic, and you don't even, it's not even built enough for you to take a good turn. So I'm curious, I can see how, putting the traffic underneath and then kind of going through the village, the marketplace, whatever it is you're calling it.
East side?
Yeah, the east side, yeah. Yeah, going through there, that makes some sense, as opposed to going, right now you have to go down Patterson and go that way. But I'm curious as to how that underpass, for bikes, cars, and pedestrians, how that would relate to the Union Street bike path, because as I went up there, it looks like it goes quite a ways up where the bike path is now.
I'm Scott Manser with DKS Associates, transportation engineer that worked on this. But the intent is to really serve as a local street, but one of the problems from accessing business to business, really the focus as we looked at land use and the added trips, we had Wallace Road is at or near capacity, and so we had to come up with a plan to serve the businesses. And as we looked at the added trips that would come out of this plan, we needed something that allowed traffic to get east and west. And right now you have to go through the traffic signals. And by providing this local street connection, it's a way to allow buses, trucks, vehicles to get by either side. But what we've envisioned is actually putting in a multi-use path that will connect up. Really, this, out of the traffic study, this recommendation was for motor vehicles. However, by making this connection and the modeling work we did, it just makes perfect sense to connect it up to the Union Street Bridge and provide a nice, safe connection. But basically, we're going to pull the bicycle and pedestrians prior to the motor vehicle traffic being added and have a multi-use path that then goes underneath Wallace Road. So it would be like a 12-foot.
Separate from the bicycle, excuse me, separate from the cars?
Correct. Yeah. And if you could pull we pulled the slides, or way to go back. The one that showed the image that had the picture. I just wanted to
2-4 or 3-4.
Yeah. So if you see in the upper right-hand corner there, that path actually sits up higher. I think it's about 6 to 8 feet higher than the motor vehicle traffic.
I understand.
So,
yeah, that's a good idea.
So that's what the intent. And that way, for pedestrian bikes, they feel comfortable. They're not like they're right next to the traffic.
Oh, yeah.
So does that make sense?
It certainly does, and I'm all for that. And I think, to me, connectivity from a transportation point of view that's in my view, that's the most crucial thing to look at here, as opposed to the engine of economic development. Yeah. I think if you've got connectivity, it'll be easier for the development to come in.
If I could add one thing too, with that local street connection, there's questions about serving the businesses, and right now the signals are very congested, and to make a left turn at a lot of those signals, it can be very challenging, especially at Taggart. Glen Creek's a lot better right now. But one of the things this local street connection does is you can actually circulate from each side of Wallace Road and make a right turn onto Wallace Road. So previously you had to go through the signal to make a left turn. Now you can actually circulate around and make right turns, which are much easier to make on Wallace Road.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I see. I'm sorry, I can't see your name.
Oh, I got it the wrong way.
Sorry.
It's Nick.
Yes. Yes, your question?
I'm let's see. I don't know what the slide number is. Where the conceptual districts, that slide? If I understand correctly, Zone 2, which is where the Second Street crossing is going to go into, the whole mindset is to basically go as a craft industry. If it's just craft industry, is there a need for this underpassing for that type of? 'Cause I know I've been banging my head. How can you put like a Fred Meyer's type of stores over in that corner? Something in the gateway, something to draw the economic development there. And everyone that's been on this board more than I have, which is a lot of people at this table, says there's no way that there could be anything big there. Like all the developers say no, everyone says no. So my question is, are we building a bridge that is not going to be utilized for our intended purpose of craft industry? If it's supposed to be craft industry, how does the transportation goes with the craft industry?
Sure.
So I'll just respond to that. For the traffic analysis that we did and determining what improvements were needed to support that, it was based on that craft industry. So because of the changes of land use that we're looking at, to make the industrial changes, to make the commercial and business changes, the city will be required to meet what's called transportation planning rule analysis, which we're, based on whatever changes in traffic that we're adding, we're going to have to come up with mitigations to make those improvements. And so based on those assumptions, the undercrossing was what would be required to be constructed to support that change in land use.
So the Rain Street location is, if they transform that into like a brewery, it's required for a brewery to go there to have that Second Street?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what the 6 alternatives that we looked at, and the Second Street was the most cost-effective option to mitigate the impacts from that land use.
Okay, thank you.
I think Member Bednarz and then Member Bennett.
I was hoping that, Annie, if you could return. I know about the ownership of the old railroad right-of-way between Rosemont and Patterson, because we acquired a portion of that when we did these improvements between Rosemont and Kingwood.
Yes.
But I'm not familiar as well with the railway right-of-way between Patterson and Wallace Road. Can you talk a little bit about that at this point?
My understanding in speaking with our former city attorney and the research that he did was that the city has the underlying rights to the right-of-way in this area between Patterson and Wallace Road. As you can see, some of the buildings encroach upon that area. The businesses there are using it, but it may not. But going back and looking at the documents, that was our former city's attorney's opinion, was that the city had the underlying rights.
Okay, and the other thing I just want to clarify in my own mind. So if we did this underpass, it's going to have a 14-foot or something clearage if you're allowing vehicles to go through there. It's not just for
17
people.
foot.
17 foot.
Foot clearance, yes.
That's going down quite a ways. I mean, to realize that the berm that is around that whole area is to prevent flooding. They feel safe that that's well within acceptable tolerances of any sort of flood that we've had, even the 96.
Yes, and as I mentioned, responding to the earlier question, there's still a little more engineering work to be done. What we're sharing with you tonight is an update where we are right now. When we come back next, we'll have more information, but the preliminary cost estimates that have been done for that undercrossing include the cost for some type of pumping system, assuming, yes, that there's water and that there's some kind of system that needs to remove water at certain times of the year because of the grades.
Okay, thank you.
Member Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you kind of define for me what underlying rights means when you have a building on top of the property?
Maybe I'll let Dan, our city attorney, speak.
Dan Atchison, city attorney.
Is that why this is underground? It's underlying?
Are you referring to the railroad right-of-way?
No, I'm referring to Annie's comment about, the railroad right-of-way and its status and whether or not it's available really for the kind of connection you're describing.
As far as the physical engineering questions, I'll let Annie butcher those, but
I'm interested in the property right.
Just in general, right-of-way is just a form of easement. So
right.
If we granted an easement to the railroad for the right-of-way, if that easement terminates, the underlying ground ownership of that reverts back to the city of Salem.
I'm just a little concerned with the description of buildings on top of this right-of-way and the underlying right-of-way. I'm not sure what that all means in terms of how this plan progresses. I mean, does it become a property acquisition problem, or how does how do you resolve these kinds of conflicts?
It could be that all that is done is simply a shift or a slight shift in where the road is located. Again, we haven't looked at those details. What I was referring, the term underlying there was, I was just referring to basically the history and the fact that in looking back at the documents, yes, the city controls that and has the rights, so therefore we could pursue moving forward with this project in terms of having the rights or having access to the right-of-way, controlling the right-of-way. In terms of how it's designed, it could be, yes, that maybe the road shifts in that particular area. I don't know if anyone knows the exact footage, how much that building encroaches. I don't have that information with me tonight.
I'm just a little concerned. I serve on some committees over at Division of State Lands where we deal with filled lands and whole cities on top of filled lands and who owns it. And it becomes a really knotty problem as you try to work your way through it, and particularly as you're dealing with existing structures, and I'm concerned about it. And what that does particularly to the property, the status, I guess, of the title for those buildings on top of that right-of-way, how that's all going to get clarified at some point. And I'd really like to have a clearer understanding of that, I think, as you talk about at least this specific portion of Section 2. I'd really like to understand that better and have some sort of clear comment, real clear comment from the building owners as to kind of how they see it. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yes, and in the next round of outreach, we'll be going back out and meeting with property owners in this area and talking to them. And I would expect when we come back in the spring, we can have more information on that.
Okay, that would be really helpful.
Yes.
The other, I guess, is following up on Nick's questions. What happened to the Fred Meyer in all of this? That was such a, or something like it, some sort of attracting major gateway facility. Where are we on that concept then in this plan?
What we've done in this plan, the key piece to respond to that was to do a market analysis, to look at what is the market demand for particular uses. We looked at a hotel, we looked at a grocery store, we looked at a variety of uses, and Leland conducted that work. And what the data said was that there is not a demand for, or strong enough demand for, another grocer in the near term. So and then subsequently we proceeded with other tasks in the study to respond to that. If what you're wanting is more detail on the market study and that demand, I could have Dave Siegel from Leland speak to that. If what you're talking about is how we're preparing with urban renewal projects, what we're trying to do is, based on the market demand and what there's demand for, what kinds of projects can the urban renewal area be prioritizing, and how do we, and so transportation is the other key challenge in developing that corner, be it for Fred Meyer or anything else. So what recommendations here we're bringing forward would be something that we could share with a developer, be it Fred Meyer, any other use, and we could say these are some of the mitigations, i.e. 2nd Street, and if you implement these, or this urban renewal area does, you will meet your TIA, your mitigation for traffic as part of that development. So I think that's part of how we're getting ready. I don't know if that answers your question.
I have go ahead, Member Bennett, and then Member McCoy after that.
Okay. Then, so what you've done then with this plan is we're sort of, because of the traffic problem at that corner, are we then looking at taking what was at least 5 years ago in discussions about this property, sort of a large piece of property, is that being then planned in smaller units? Is that kind of how you're looking at, you sort of cut it up with streets and begin breaking it up? Is that how I understand it? Because the discussion well, it'd be even more than, it'd be about 6 years ago, was really around the idea of a larger gateway project, looking at that property as more like a single unit. So is it, what I see up there, then you're starting to break it into smaller units aimed at this craft industry, or?
Well, that's something we've been talking about and something we
Okay.
want feedback on. You know, in terms of this proposal, what's shown here is improving Second Street, and that First could be vacated. And so you would have these parcels to
looking at the
redevelop here.
wrong map,
So
sorry.
here's Edgewater. Sorry. I don't know, is it easier if we dim the lights?
Waiting for that to light up.
If we,
It's a better
Sorry. Do
so,
it again.
so here you have Edgewater and First, you know, those parcels. But that's been part of the discussion with the consultant team and with our stakeholders is that deep enough so you have those parcels to redevelop, and then improving Second, and then you still, you know, these dotted lines are potential. You know, maybe, so maybe these, not all these streets connect. We want to hear from the businesses if that's beneficial.
Okay.
So, but yes, if you put this street in, you do further divide, you know, and these properties. But right now, that's something we're seeking feedback on. Other than that, we're not proposing any other divisions. We want to maintain flexibility in that district.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Member McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in the Area 2, Annie, and from back when I lived there years ago, it was, you know, Agri-Pack was in there and the old Rain Suite / turkey plant,
Yes.
all that stuff were in there. Are they going to have to be not, A, flattened to build the new facilities to house these craft industries that you're envisioning? Or
We're not there yet in the study, and I don't think the kinds of recommendations that you would see would be, you know, things that we could use urban renewal funding to encourage craft industrial. So maybe one of those strategies would be to acquire a property, i.e. Rain Suite, another property, and put some funding into preparing that building to attract craft industrial uses, or possibly a grant program to try to encourage those. So there's nothing that's going to come out of the study, I think, that's going to say to demolish buildings. But is what you're looking at, that it looks like the building footprint goes underneath there? I think that's just the way the drawing, the yellow of that drawing appears. That's not really how it is in reality, if that makes sense.
Yes, go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
so we've still got, so I understand it then, we've still got major buildings there owned by other entities
Yes. Oh, yeah.
that haven't been approached, and it's big, those are big buildings, so
Yes.
there's a lot of work down the road, even if, so what comes first? Getting rid of the owners of those buildings and then building the street so you have access, or building the street and the underpass, and then hopefully moving forward, once you've got the street there, to support whatever else it would be that you'd build.
And I want to clarify, because I hope that everyone knows this is a conceptual drawing, and the yellow may
I
make
get
it
that.
appear. I think, but what I'm hearing from you is that it looks, or that you're getting the impression that the yellow is covered, that the street improvement is somehow requiring us to tear that building down, and that's just
No.
how the yellow bleeds.
No, I
Okay.
got that.
Okay.
I'm still saying, sort of what comes first, the chicken or the egg here? Is it the street improvements come first to then sort of generate interest in reinvesting in that area?
But it's expensive.
Yeah,
We don't
very
have the urban renewal funds for it.
And Mr. Fernandez, would you like to address that, about how that typically works in this city? Because I think there are some examples both ways, so Peter can talk about that.
Certainly. Peter Fernandez, Public Works Director. It's great to see this this plan up here, because when we did the Wallace Road Local Access Circulation Study many moons ago, that street number 2 just west of Wallace Road was actually in the original plan, and at the time, council decided to not include it. So this was 15 years ago. So typically, what we can do with urban renewal is put in the improvements to incent the development. So we've put in, Cornucopia Street was put in, Taggart Bartell was put in, that has then incented some of the development that you've seen out there. So Councilor McCoy, definitely I think the egg comes first. So it's in the form of the streets.
Right.
It mysteriously appears.
I think Councilor Bennett is next, and then Councilor Bernards.
One other question. That south side of Edgewater, in various iterations of the Salem River crossing study, that gets lost. And are we looking now at a plan that says that is going to be part of a redevelopment plan, that it no longer appears at any point underneath overpasses or extended highway? I want to make sure I understand what's going on along Edgewater in terms of...
And I would let Julie Warnicke speak to Edgewater and the Salem River crossing.
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking about the properties that are on the south side of Edgewater and whether or not we are assuming that they are going to be no longer businesses in the future with the Salem River crossing preferred alternative. Is that your question?
Yeah, probably the bottom line is, are you going to pave it or will it be redeveloped as businesses? My understanding of the plan is, the thought is that that south side of Edgewater is redeveloped. Does that fit with the river crossing configurations that we've seen?
The south side of Edgewater, between about Wallace Road and Girth, I believe, not maybe Patterson. So that section in there is proposed to not have businesses on it.
What's it have on it then?
It would have the ramp connections coming down, the greenway area, we'd have landscaping. We would not have just pavement because the Salem alternative took out the one ramp that would have led to Rosemont. That's the ramp that would have taken out all of the businesses as well as the vast majority of the landscaping. With the preferred alternative, there will be space for some landscaping and softening of any hardscape. However, this plan is not proposing redevelopment in that particular area. This is really focusing the redevelopment on the north side of Edgewater and with 2nd Street further to the, my directions right here, further to the west. There would still be redevelopment and development on the south side in the area west of Patterson.
Okay.
Does that answer that?
It does. It's a little confusing on the plan map because it doesn't, I really think that that needs to be updated so that the public is able to comment on that portion of it as well. If it's slated that way, I want to understand it is. I mean, that is certainly part of the redevelopment plan, is to turn it from business and a greenscape into something different. A smaller greenscape, presumably.
Smaller greenscape and hardscape combined to, for that transition area. And we did, I will say that our consultants did earlier have a sort of a light yellow shading on here to try to convey that. And we had asked them to take it off because we thought it confused things. We can more than happy to put that back on there.
I think it's kind of truth in advertising for the river crossing and what the future redevelopment in that area looks like.
What we were trying to do with this project is not plan anything that changes the preferred alternative, but we're also trying to recognize that we want to have redevelopment, encourage redevelopment in this area even before these ramps go in or, the 3rd bridge or 4th bridge is constructed.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Bernards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to make a comment more than a question, and this is somewhat in defense of Annie, in reference to why some of the answers that we're receiving are a little nebulous. We're not getting clear answers on some of this. Part of it's because in the process of saying, I want to put a street in here, you just went across somebody's parking lot or through somebody's building, as we're talking about right now. So I remember on the board, there's a lot of conversation of, well, how can we encourage development without discouraging existing businesses in that area? And so that's why there's this tentative, well, you know, we know that we have a landowner that might want to sell something here, but we don't have everything put together. And that's why you're not getting a direct answer. The second thing that needs to be understood is, unless it's in the URA plan, you can't do it. So if you wanted to acquire a bunch of land, for example, aggregate it, and then find a tenant to go into it, unless it's in the plan, which it's not at this point, you couldn't do it. So you say, well, I'm going to pick up the old Turkey building because I know it's up for sale or something. You can't do it, just to speculate that you might do something down the road. So keep those two things in mind.
I'm sorry, Member Anderson, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you put the slide up which shows 2nd Street with the yellow on it, please? No, there's another one, I think. Yeah, that one, thank you. So there's that great yellow area that I understand it's just to highlight it, but then we've got this arrow, and this arrow appears to go out on 2nd Street, and where does that come out? The people that are going and using the underpass from the west, where do they originate? And the people who are using the underpass coming from the east and going west, where do they end up when that arrow is there?
And I'm assuming you're referring to this, are you referring to the north-south arrow or
No,
this
I'm referring to
here?
the west arrow at the end of the yellow, right there.
Okay.
Is that dumping out into that street's continuation of 2nd, or does it plan to get over to 1st and Edgewater? Because both of the car bridges come out at Edgewater, but the Union Street Bike Pedestrian Bridge, which would flow into the underpass, where do those cars originate from? And when they come off out of the marketplace area, where are they going to end up? I mean, it just looks like you're dumping them out on there, well, on Patterson, you know, on the intersection of Patterson and 2nd.
And again, this is a conceptual image
that.
trying to show some potential projects. I would have Scott Manser could speak to what happens in the model, you know, where the cars and the people, is that what you're looking for?
Sure.
Okay.
Because, you know, the street that gets people eventually to Highway 22 is Edgewater going that way, and 2nd Street appears to leave you hanging in the middle there.
Yes. So, I mean, as far as the model, that 2nd Street connects up to the existing 2nd Street connection that was recently reconstructed. And for the most part, you know, from the model standpoint, we really are more focused on arterial and collector streets. Okay. And so some of the local street connections are in that system, but it's really connecting the residential to the areas up on the hill.
So you're saying the model, the way we have it, the road 2nd Street leading to the underpass would really be collecting residential traffic as opposed to through traffic?
Yeah, I mean, it's really more, the 2nd Street is really going to serve local street traffic to and from, kind of originating from and destined for land uses within those areas.
So the goal of that, or a goal of that, is to get traffic off Edgewater and Wallace Road so through traffic can move through there more smoothly.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. So instead of using, for example, Wallace Road is the main connection to get to the businesses east and west of Wallace, the 2nd Street is really taking those trips off those streets.
Thank you very much.
Are there further questions from anyone, either on the advisory board? Yes.
Yeah, I just have a comment. You know, I listen to this, and the area that can be developed is really interesting because most major malls and development.
Can you speak right into the microphone?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Most, you know, there is 2 major grocery stores in West Salem, so adding a developer that would do a mall such is a difficult challenge. It adds another challenge to it. Annie's idea of, or everyone's idea of craft businesses really can make something, you know, that Salem has. It's cool. We have hundreds of wineries that surround the city. We don't utilize it. It's very close to downtown that could really is getting better and it really needs to lift up. And I'm a business owner and I wouldn't dare put a business on 2nd Street. If you can figure out the fastest way to get people from 2nd Street over to Wallace, I think it would actually take traffic off of Wallace because it would lure people down that way and add a lot more development. And I don't think anyone's going to go there until that street somehow gets done. And that should be a a collective effort, you know, kind of almost like, hey, these are the options. Let's vote who thinks this is the best way to do it, and it needs to happen as soon as possible. So that's my comment.
Great, thank you. Further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor McCoy.
Whoops. Interested in the way you've labeled the different areas. You've got a town center, you've got a main street, you've got the industrial. So what's envisioned for the town center area, which right now, from what I can recall, is pretty much fast food row, isn't it? A lot of my members, but it's fast food row.
The recommendations, as you see, a big piece of it could be improving. Many of those are private streets currently now, and some of them dead end before you get to the park. Our consultants see the park as a major amenity there that could build on the opportunity for more housing. So that's so it could be more street connections as development occurs, possibly some streetscape here along Glen Creek to try to build and ultimately design standards as new development occurs. Buildings are closer to the street frontage. In addition to, again, longer term, more housing in the area because of the proximity to the park, and along with as connections are made to the other larger park network in the area. You know, from the railroad bridge, you'll be able to get over to Riverfront and ultimately to Minto once the bridge is constructed. So those are some of the ideas that are envisioned.
Thank you.
All right. Any further comments or questions? I know we're getting short on time. All right. Thank you, and I want to thank staff for all the preparation and the explanations this evening, and thanks to the advisory board members for coming this evening. We particularly always are happy to see you, even if you're not participating on the floor. We always welcome you, and we certainly appreciate your service on the advisory committee. The advisory boards are extremely important to the work that we do, so thank you all for your service and for being here tonight. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a break so that everybody can kind of readjust, and we'll get our meetings underway shortly, very shortly. All right, I will call to order this evening's special meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Salem for January 26, 2015. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Bennett?
Here.
Board Member Anderson?
Present.
Board Member Nanke?
Here.
Board Member McCoy?
Here.
Board Member Dickey?
Here.
Board Member Benjamin?
Here.
Board Member Benars?
Here.
Board Member Lewis?
Here.
Chair Peterson?
Here. Thank you. We have some guests this evening. I'd like to ask them to come down. We have Troop 1 from Salem, who are 6th grade scouts. Would you please come down and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance? They're here tonight because they're working on their citizenship badge, I believe it's called. So we're always very honored when they come. You'll come down this way. You're okay? Would you please introduce yourselves?
I'm Cam. I am Jordan.
I'm Luke.
All right. Thank you very much. Will you turn and face the flag and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I want to also say a special thank you to parents who take the time to work with the young people week in and week out, and especially appreciate you bringing them to City Council this evening. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause. This evening, I don't see any board reports of boards, commissions, or committees. Is there anyone signed up for public comment for the Urban Renewal Agency? Is there anyone in the audience tonight that did want to comment on something on the agenda, on the Urban Renewal Agency agenda? All right, seeing no one there.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Noting that this is a special meeting, do we actually need to approve the agenda?
I don't know. You're the parliamentarian that I'm going to rely on.
Thank you. I would move approval of the agenda for the January 26th special meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Council President Nanke and seconded by Councilor. Actually, we're members at this. We're members. Member Bednarz. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. And let's see. We don't have any additions or deletions, apparently. These are just for the council. Okay. Won't worry about those then. All right. Member Nanke, do you have a motion regarding the consent calendar?
I do, Madam Mayor. I would move the consent calendar with the following pulls. 4.3C by Member Anderson.
Second.
That's it?
And if I may just comment on those items that are not being pulled, we had an earlier meeting on the West Salem Urban Renewal Area Plan. We'll also be appointing members to the West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board. There were only 3 items, and then the third one is being pulled by Member Anderson.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by Member Nanke and seconded by Member Bednarz. And I would say all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And then we will move the item 4C, excuse me for being a little slow, 4C, will go to special orders of business. In your packets, in your agenda packets this evening, there are information reports, and I'm wondering if there are any questions or comments on those 4 reports for the information items. Were there any questions about that? None? Oh, all right. Fine, thank you. Then we'll proceed to special orders of business. And Member Anderson, would you like to present a motion regarding item 4.3C?
I move the adoption of item 4.3C.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Anderson and seconded by Member Bednarz to adopt the recommendation on item 4.3C. Is there discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay.
It's a question, really. I look at this, and I'm asking, does this have a specific project in mind already, or is it just for something that we hope to develop something with the grant program?
Yes, and Mr. Scott will respond.
Councilor Anderson, there is a specific project in mind, and in fact, this specific grant program that's before you tonight is really precipitated because the potential purchaser of that property had a development plan that originally had an acute care facility located on the east side of the North Block property that ran north-south parallel to the railroad tracks. All of that building was, at the time, inside the riverfront downtown urban renewal area. The new plan that's proposed has the building on the south side of the North Block property, of which the majority of the building now sits within the South Waterfront URA. And so that is why we are here today. I would say that this type of a program can incent other development, other redevelopment, significant redevelopment in the South Waterfront URA. But the reason we are here today at this time is because of this specific development, and because it's a condition in the purchase and sale agreement for the parcel at Riverfront Park.
So could you explain to me, please, what a performance grant, what that means in layperson's terms?
I'll try my best, Councilor Anderson.
A performance grant is just that. It is a grant of money, and in this case, it is a grant of future tax increment collections generated by the development itself, hence the performance. It requires the developer to perform, build what they say they're going to build, and generate a level of tax increment that is sufficient in order to provide those revenues to them over time.
So they have to generate the $750,000 by, in what manner? By taxes that are abated during the 10-year period, or by some other standard?
They're not abated. What it would be is the actual increment. Right now, the underlying property has value and is taxable. Prior to the creation of the urban renewal area, those taxes were frozen. So this particular development will actually be built, and there will be an increment, an additional tax value on the property. It is the additional tax value that they would be getting as a payment to them annually, up to a certain amount.
So instead of that additional property tax that's tax increment because it's in an urban renewal area, staying within the urban renewal area to go for other purposes, it would be used to pay this performance grant.
Thank you.
Okay, are there further questions or comments regarding that item? All right, we have a motion on the floor to accept the recommendation regarding item 4.3C. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries with one nay vote from Member Anderson. Thank you. All right. We have no unfinished business, and we have no public hearing or new business, and the Urban Renewal Agency meeting is adjourned.
I saw that. I saw it.
Do you still want to pull that too?
No, no.
Okay.
No, I think they got the message. Yeah.
All right. All right, I'd like to call to order this evening's meeting of the Salem City Council for January 26, 2015. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Bennett?
Here.
Councilor Anderson?
Present.
Councilor Nanke?
Here.
Councilor McCoy?
Here.
Councilor Dickey?
Here.
Councilor Benjamin?
Here.
Councilor Bednarz?
Here.
Councilor Lewis?
Here.
Mayor Peterson?
Here. Thank you. We now have time for, we have the approval of additions and deletions to the agenda. Council President Nanke, do you have a motion?
I do, Madam Mayor. I would move approval of the additions, deletions, and revisions to the agenda as encompassed within two handouts at your desk, and they would be updated on the website as well then.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Council President Nanke and seconded by Councilor Bednarz to adopt to approve the additions to the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have time for council and city manager comment. Are any of the councilors wanting some time for council comment? Councilor Nanke.
Thank you. Just a quick one. On Saturday, I helped out at the Ivy Pole over at Brush College Park in West Salem. Actually, first time I've been over in West Salem in a bit. I got to actually see the improvement on Glen Creek and Wallace, and it was very impressive. It was nice to actually see it in person versus a snapshot here or there. But there was 13 of us out along the creek, yanking, in some cases, old growth ivy. off of trees that was fairly large in diameter. But we made a dent. It still needs a lot more work, and I know that they're looking at doing several more ivy pools. I think on Earth Day, they're going to be doing a demonstration project at Waldo Park. So people can see what the heck it is and why we're trying to get it off of the trees.
Wonderful. And what was the name of the organization that organized that?
I think it's No Ivy Coalition.
Oh, indeed. All right. Okay. And others who might want to do that, how would they find out about the
Actually, we're
schedule?
distributed to the neighborhood associations as well. I don't know if there's something on our website as well, or...
We'll put that on our website under What's New in case people would like to get involved.
That would be great. Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
It was fun.
All right. Other comments by councilors? City manager.
Yes, I do have one. I wanted to talk about our city softball program for a minute. At the recent Amateur Softball Association's National Council meeting, the City of Salem softball program was awarded the James Farrell Award of Excellence for hosting 3 of the highest rated national level softball tournaments in 2014. And this is actually the 8th year in a row that we've won this award. In 2014, Salem hosted 3 ASA national tournaments and received an average evaluation score of 99% for all 3 tournaments. So we're going to try to do better, right? Which is really wonderful to get a score that high. They helped the city successfully bid for future tournaments, and we've just been awarded the 2016 Girls 16 Gold Fast Pitch National. And this summer, the city's going to be hosting 4 ASA national tournaments at the Wallace Marine Softball Park. These tournaments are an important source of income to our restaurants and lodging industry and bring in between $1 and $3 million a year for those industries. So it's really important both in terms of people coming here and enjoying Salem and having fun and playing softball in it. It also helps our local economy. These awards couldn't be possible, and I'd like them to stand up without Billy Powers and Maggie Combs, who I swear work 24 hours a day during softball season. They're really wonderful and do just a terrific job. They're helped by a group of part-time and seasonal recreation staff that operate the tournaments, and then our park staff who keep our facilities, even though they're somewhat old, they keep them in good shape and keep the park in good shape so people can really enjoy themselves when they come. So I'd like to congratulate Billy and Maggie for another wonderful year.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I have a couple of presentations this evening, and the first one has to do with the 2015 Grant Neighborhood Calendar, and I would ask Sam Skilleran to come down and join me, and we'll talk about the calendar.
Bringing my neighbor Lola.
No.
All right, okay. Welcome. Good evening, Sam. It's always a pleasure to have you here. This is Sam Skilleran and Lola.
Lola Hackett.
Lola Hackett, a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for coming and for your work on the calendar. I can't wait to see it. So you hold it up, and now I'm going to give you the microphone, and I'm going to hold the calendars. How's that?
Okay, then I'm going to share the microphone with Lola.
Yes, you may do that. But we do have to be a little brief, but I can't wait to get my hands on the calendar. Okay.
Well, we brought one for everybody, and we double-checked with all the authorities that this gift is below the threshold of what, but we want you to have your own very own copy of the Grant Neighborhood Calendar. So we're the smallest of the 18 neighborhood associations, but we like to think that we have big ideas and big impact. And we have a lot of great historic homes and structures in our neighborhood. And so in working with the great city staff, Sally Studner and Kimberly Fitzgerald in particular, we've just been working on ways to promote our neighborhood, not promote it like brag or say we're the best, but just to showcase an area of town that not everybody knows about and that sometimes is overlooked, or every once in a while somebody might not even have as positive an attitude as they might. And so we do a lot of things in the Grant neighborhood to call attention to our school and our neighbors, our neighborhood, the businesses, the Broadway Commons, the whole Broadway redevelopment. And we've just been working with the city for a long, long time to make our neighborhood a great neighborhood. And this calendar is just the latest example of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Lola to talk a little bit more about how it all works and what our plan is.
I'm not sure how it all works. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you, and I'm so glad to be here not requesting anything, not complaining about anything, but telling you we appreciate the city's support on this. Grant is the first neighborhood in Salem to receive the Heritage Neighborhood designation. We're very proud of that. We are hopefully working towards National Historic designation as a neighborhood, and it's a very slow process. We have to convince everyone that it's a good thing. So a team from the neighborhood has been working with the city's Community Development Department to create these calendars. And we have so many pictures that I think we can probably do this for several more years if we feel that it's accepted well enough. You can purchase the calendars through the Community Development Department if you care to have more. And there's a team of us now. Some of us were working on the calendar project and kind of rolled over into this, and we have some new members too, to create an architectural guide for the neighborhood. So it identifies the types of houses that we have in the neighborhood and some special features that may even be unique to the neighborhood. And we hope that'll be out soon. So again, thank you very much for city support in this project.
And I just want to thank our photographer who worked on this. Well, first of all, Fox Blue, because they're the printer, so a nice downtown business. We always want to buy local. And Lynn Howlett, who was the photographer on this project. And like Lola said, and Lola's husband, Christopher, is here with us tonight, too. We have jillions of photographs, and we couldn't get them all in this year, but I'm sure there'll be other editions of this. So this is the first edition, highly collectible Grant Neighborhood Association calendar. You know, the first year and the first editions are always, you know, a little bit more valuable. So, again, thanks to the city in general, thanks to the Community Development Department, thanks to Kimberly and Sally, and there's some interns that are working on this project that are just doing a bang-up job. So thank you so much for your support of the city.
Well, this is wonderful, and thank you for all your work, and thank you for coming this evening. I think that we are blessed as a community to not only have individuals that will work on projects like this, but have the entire neighborhood band together and work together for this. The historic nature, the architectural heritage, just the beauty of these neighborhoods is so important to the livability of our community and important really to the soundness and the quality of our community. So thanks to you and thanks to all of the people who are working hard to keep their homes and their properties looking so beautiful.
And hopefully we'll do a good job with this. There's a lot of pressure on us, but if it goes well, other neighborhoods would have similar opportunity perhaps.
I think that's probably right. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. All right, this is wonderful. My second guest this evening is Alan Pennington, and he's going to come and talk about our Earthwise certification. And I know that Alan has come before. Oh, do come right down here because we're going to get you right on this microphone. Alan has been here in the past, and he has come this evening to talk about our Earthwise certification, and I think to present this to me, right? Sure. All right, I'm going to give you the microphone. I'm going to hold this.
I had this great speech worked out. It was going to be really long and, you know, some jokes peppered in there, but I'll keep it short. But anyway, my name is Alan Page. I work for Marion County, and I'm really proud to be here because I was here 3 years ago, and one of the things that's different than 3 years ago is at that time, only some of the city entities were Earthwise certified. Now, Earthwise certification is a program that goes through Marion County, and we work with businesses, nonprofits, governments, to find ways to become more sustainable, reduce waste, save money on energy, water conservation, all the good things that we need to be working on to protect our beautiful environment here in the Willamette Valley. But since that time, the public works shops got Earthwise certified, and the entire city of Salem's, every known entity that I know of is Earthwise certified now. So my hat is off to the city of Salem. So I'd like to say thank you to all the leadership and the rank and file that did that. Come on, let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. 3 more years and we'll do it again? Is that it? That will be wonderful. Well, we want to thank Marion County for really organizing this special certification and coming this evening and presenting this to us. We're happy to be a partner with this. Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
We want the pedals next time, too.
All right, here we go. All right. We have time for public comment. Is there anyone signed up? No one has signed up for public comment on agenda items other than the public hearing item or and deliberation. Is there anyone in the audience that did want to provide public comment on agenda items? All right, thank you. Not at this time. Then we will move to the consent calendar. And Councillor Nanke, do you have a motion?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
I would move the consent calendar with the following pulls. 3.3B, we're giving that to Councillor Lewis regarding the Planning Commission membership, and 3.3D by Councillor Bennett dealing with downtown parking.
Second.
And if I may speak to just a couple of other items that are on the consent calendar that'll be moving through. We have the use of some streets and bridges, general obligation bond monies going to work on the signal interconnect to speed up traffic along Liberty between Market and Salem Parkway. Essentially, we're trading money with another project and are able to get outside of some of the federal requirements, which will speed the project up by a year and save us about $50,000. We'll be approving the legislative policy statements that will guide our actions during the upcoming legislative session. And amending a ground lease with a Cottonwood Lakes golf course over in Kaiser abutting our wastewater treatment plant to deal with the downturn in the economy and how we had written the agreement on how much money they had to give us.
All right. There is a motion on the floor moved by Councillor Nanke and seconded by Councillor Benars with the for the approval of the consent calendar with the exception of 3.3B, which is being pulled by Councillor Lewis, and 3.3D, which is being pulled by Councillor Bennett. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we have a public hearing this evening for A on the agenda. Would the city recorder please present the public hearing?
The Salem City Council will now hold a public hearing for the purpose of considering adoption of Ordinance Bill 2314 relating to the adoption of the new Nen-Cessna Neighborhood Plan, a component of the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan, and amending Salem Revised Code Section 64.005.
Thank you. And do we have a staff report?
We do. Hi, I'm Eunice Kim. I'm a planner with the Community Development Department, and I'm here tonight to present the Nen-Cessna Neighborhood Plan. I wanted to acknowledge that several members of the Nen and Cessna boards are here tonight, and Lisa Anderson Ogilvie, the Urban Planning Administrator, also worked on this plan.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by giving a brief overview of what a neighborhood plan is. So a neighborhood plan is a written document that really captures the goals and priorities of a neighborhood on a broad range of topics, everything from parks to residential development to transportation. So it's kind of a whole host of issues in terms of envisioning the future of the neighborhoods. And this is a plan that doesn't just sit on the shelf, it's actually used by both the city and the neighborhoods. So for example, if Public Works is looking at transportation projects in a neighborhood, it can look to the neighborhood plan and say, these are the projects that were actually priorities in the neighborhoods, and perhaps have funding go towards those first. So it's an important document for the neighborhoods in terms of being proactive and shaping their own future. So this is a map of Nen and Cessna. Nen is in the reddish color to the north, and Cessna is the greenish color to the south, and they're divided by State Street. This is the first time we've had two abutting neighborhoods work on a joint neighborhood plan, and we think the process has worked pretty well. While Nen and Cessna have their differences, they're definitely distinct neighborhoods, they also share a lot of similar issues. For example, they both have older, established residential neighborhoods that are closer to the downtown. There's a lot of major transportation corridors that go through the neighborhoods and lead to downtown. And there's a lot of creeks, so flooding's a big issue in both. So both pros and cons, they share a lot of issues together. The Nen-Cessna Neighborhood Plan has 13 chapters. 8 chapters are focused on issues like parks, transportation, open space, and 3 chapters are focused on opportunity areas. So opportunity areas, there are 3 of them. One is the State Street corridor, the other one is McGilchrist Street area in Cessna, and the third is the North Campus of the State Hospital, which while it's outside of Nen and Cessna, obviously what happens there will impact the neighborhoods. So Nen and Cessna had an opportunity to kind of weigh in on what they wanted for those 3 areas. And at the end of the neighborhood plan are 3 maps. The first map is the generalized land use map, and this is essentially a carbon copy of the comprehensive plan map, so it's the city's long-term land use map, so there's no changes in terms of what the neighborhoods could do with that map. However, there are 2 opportunities map, one for Nen and one for Cessna, and that's kind of where the neighborhoods could be creative and think about what do they want to see in terms of land use and development in their future. I just want to say that those opportunities maps are conceptual in nature, they're non-binding, and so they're just really the vision for the neighborhoods. So not all aspects of the neighborhood plan is adopted into the comprehensive plan. The goals, the policies, and the generalized land use map that I just referred to are adopted into the comprehensive plan as a component of the comprehensive plan, which is the long-term plan for the city. To be adopted into the comprehensive plan, they have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Things that weren't consistent, so the recommended actions, the opportunities maps, those conceptual maps I was talking about, those are just support documents and they're not actually adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. But they are important and we take those recommendations seriously and they kind of provide policy guidance, so we do refer to them in future actions. So this timeline shows that we've been working on the neighborhood plan for over a year and a half. We kicked it off in April of 2013, and we had monthly meetings in the neighborhoods on all different types of topics, including parks, recreation, residential development, mixed-use development, the opportunity areas I referred to. And then the Nen and Cessna boards adopted the neighborhood plan in October. We held a work session, a joint work session with the Planning Commission, and then on October 18th, the Planning Commission voted to recommend to the council that the council adopt the plan. So that brings us to tonight. Public engagement was a major component of this plan. At the end of the day, this is a plan that really is the neighborhood's plan, so it's important that we got out into the neighborhood, talked to residents, property owners, business owners, anyone who'd be willing to talk to us. We had over 200 participants, and we had over 300 people on our email list. So we reached out in flyers, surveys, neighborhood meetings. We went door to door. We did everything we could to reach out to people. So we saw this as an opportunity to maybe reach some people who wouldn't typically go to a neighborhood association meeting, maybe weren't always engaged in their neighborhood. And we think we're pretty successful in really drawing out people to participate in this plan. So we used all the input we got from this public engagement to really shape the recommendations in the plan. And so I'm going to highlight 4 chapters tonight. And I wanted to point out a couple things. First of all, not 100% of the people that participated in the plan agreed with 100% of the recommendations, but we were really successful in terms of broad consensus on the majority of the issues. And in the presentation, things that say P are policies, so those are things that would be adopted into the comprehensive plan, and things that say A are recommended actions. So those are not adopted, those would be kind of policy guidance support documents. So this is a map of Nen and Cessna, the residential zoning. And as you can see, Nen is a lot of yellow. The yellow stands for single-family residential. And Cessna has a mix of residential zoning. But largely, both neighborhoods actually have single-family neighborhoods. So it's really important to both neighborhoods to maintain and reinforce those neighborhoods through a variety of means, including creating design standards for small multifamily development. I should note that we do have design standards right now for multifamily development. They're largely geared towards larger developments, and so the recommendation here would be to create kind of a tailored set of recommendations or design standards for maybe triplexes and fourplexes, so that multifamily would be maybe more compatible, maybe even more palatable to the neighborhoods. Nen and Cessna, as I mentioned, also have a lot of older neighborhoods, and so they want to develop new development standards for those older homes. So when those homes want to be rehabbed or even just maintained, it would be easier to actually meet our current development standards, because right now, oftentimes they have to go through some sort of process, a public hearing or an adjustment, things like that, so it can be difficult. And they want to also diversify their housing stock by allowing accessory dwelling units or granny flats, kind of like the unit over the garage, for example. So this map shows that there are a lot of creeks, waterways that run through Nen and Cessna, so a lot of the land in the neighborhoods is in the 100-year floodplain. So flooding is a big problem in the area, and a lot of what we talked about was ways Nen and Cessna could reduce flooding. So for example, the neighborhoods really want to promote the use of green infrastructure. They also want to see if there's ways to incentivize or maybe even require existing parking lots to reduce runoff by using things like green infrastructure, because currently, we have strong stormwater code that applies more to new development or new parking lots, but the existing parking lots could really remain as is, and so the idea is how can we actually get those to be improved? And instead of just being flooding issues, the neighborhoods really want the creeks and waterways to become assets in the neighborhood, so they wanted to see maybe are there ways to reduce trash or work with business owners through outreach programs to really see how those creeks can be improved. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of major streets, State Street, Center Street, Market Street, McGilchrist, that all go through Nen and Cessna. And so the neighborhoods wanted to make sure, or to help ensure, that the livability of the neighborhoods was increased and enhanced, even though transportation, these corridors were going through their neighborhoods. So they wanted to look at different ways of doing traffic calming in their neighborhoods. And also, the neighborhoods are very close in. There's to the downtown, so walking and biking, alternative modes of transportation were important to the neighborhoods, and finding out ways to really promote people to do that. So they wanted to fill some of the gaps in the bicycle and pedestrian network. So you can see in this picture up here is D Street. While there are a lot of sidewalks and nearly complete sidewalks in Nen, there's some gaps as well as in Cessna. And a lot of the sidewalks are very old because they're older neighborhoods, and so they really want to see those sidewalks repaired by having the city prioritize sidewalk repairs in their budgetary processes. And the Nen and Cessna also wanted to see alternative street designs developed for streets that right now are maybe not wide enough to meet city standards. So if they're not wide enough, they aren't likely to get the bike and ped and all the different amenities that are called for in our plans, our transportation plans. And so they wanted to see, for example, State Street, are there ways to have more bicycle and pedestrian facilities within the existing constrained right-of-way? So speaking of State Street was a major focus of one of our meetings, and we've talked about it at length at other meetings. Right now, State Street is largely a commercial corridor. It has some multifamily, and there's some underutilized properties like the Deluxe Ice Cream. And so the neighborhoods really want to see it revitalized and made into a vibrant, pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use corridor. So they want to do that through several means, including removing some of the barriers to mixed-use development, promoting compatible design of multifamily, and coming up with design standards to make it more pedestrian-friendly. So that could be as simple as maybe having the parking lots in the back of the buildings. So I just wanted to point out the two opportunities maps I talked about earlier. Those are the conceptual, non-binding kind of vision for the future. It includes State Street, so that's number 6 on the map, where they want to see it changed to mixed use. But I really wanted to point out that in the Nen and Cessna opportunities maps, there are areas that are zoned multifamily or even multifamily high-rise. So the areas that say 3 on this map, these are areas where Nen and Cessna would like the city to consider downzoning those to residential duplex. While there are some existing multifamily developments there, and Nen and Cessna would like to keep those there, they don't want to make those non-conforming, but they would like to make those areas conform more to what's there now on the ground, which is single-family neighborhoods. And I just also wanted to point out the Cessna opportunities map has a similar area between 14th and 17th that they wanted to see potentially downzoned as well. So with that, staff recommends that City Council adopt the goals, policies, and generalized land use map of the Nen Cessna Neighborhood Plan as component of the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan, and adopt the other portions as support documents. Be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. We will actually wait for questions until after we have had the opportunity for the individuals who've signed up to testify. We really appreciate your report, and we appreciate this really extensive, well-printed document. I've enjoyed looking through it and perusing the maps, and it's a big help to us in the work that we're going to be doing moving forward. So compliments on that. Thank you. All right, we have people signed up for public comment right here in front of me. All right, I'm going to call 2 names at a time, and we can use either, you can use either podium, so we'll kind of try to keep on track here. Leslie Polson, followed by Joan Lloyd. You can go over to that one if you like. Welcome, and you have 3 minutes, and at the end of 3, oh, wait a moment, I need to ask a question. If they represent the neighborhood association, then they have how many minutes?
The neighborhood association, I believe there's be 2 for this one, good 5 minutes each.
5 minutes each. So if you're representing your neighborhood association, identify that, and you get 5 minutes, otherwise it's 3 minutes. Welcome.
Okay, my name is Leslie Polson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I live at 930 Garnet, and I'm on NEN, and I'm not going to be very long because there are a lot of us. This is a very collaborative process. We all like the neighborhood. We wanted, there was a great public engagement model. We had a lot of dissension, a lot of great discussion, a lot of great vision. The whole goal is to keep our neighborhoods livable, beautiful, walkable, and in a great condition so we can leave it to our kids and create a legacy that will be awesome. So that's my comments. And I vote that you support it because I think it's a great vision for the entire city.
Wonderful. Are there questions from councilors? All right, thanks for coming this evening. Appreciate that. Ms. Lloyd, followed by Bill Smaldone.
So, Mayor
Welcome.
Peterson, councilors.
And can you speak into the microphone? Pull
yes.
that down to where it's
Mayor
comfortable.
Peterson and councilors, Joan Lloyd, live at 1577 Court Street Northeast, and was very much involved in the neighborhood plan with the general meetings and also on the steering committee. And I am optimistically supportive of this plan. Everybody worked very hard on it. As Eunice explained, that she and Lisa did extensive outreach to get as many people involved in this. And we just had a wonderful time at the meetings. They gave presentations or asked people from the city to give presentations. And they had activities for us where we were at round tables and we had maps and pens and papers and all this kind of thing. And at each table, there were members from Cessna and from NEN. We didn't segregate into, neighborhoods. And we really appreciated Lisa and Eunice. They are keepers, really, for the city. They are very intelligent, enthusiastic. They have great people skills. And in addition to all the work they did on this, they even got a grant for us to have a study of State Street. And we're just really thrilled that we had this opportunity, and thanks to the city, we were able to do it. And Councilor Bennett was supportive of this from the beginning. And I want to thank Court Street Christian Church also for letting us use their facility. And of course, Lisa Anderson Ogilvie and Eunice Kim for their invaluable help. So,
wonderful.
That's it.
Thank you. Are there questions? Councilor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for coming down, Ms. Lloyd. On the photo of D Street and the missing sidewalk that it showed earlier, did you guys discuss, because if you look at that, it would have to either be a narrower sidewalk or you'd have to cut down those street trees because it didn't look like you could get around behind. If there's conflicts on connecting pedestrian paths, did the group speak to how to prioritize or how to deal with potentially substandard sidewalk as compared to none?
Well, I think I would ask one of the planners to speak to that, but I know that we were very keen on keeping trees, but we also want good sidewalks.
Yeah,
so
that one picture was a conflict.
So however that could be done, I don't know about that.
Okay, thanks.
True for both things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for coming down this evening. Mr. Smaldone, and he'll be followed by Jeff Leach. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Bill Smaldone. I live at 430 21st Street, Southeast. I'm the chair of the Southeast Salem Neighborhood Association. I'm very excited to be here tonight to recommend on behalf of our board that you guys please accept this staff report. It is probably one of the, I've been at this for a long time now, and I think it's one of the best projects that our neighborhood association has ever participated in. Lisa and Eunice did a terrific job for us. I want to reiterate all the things that the preceding speakers said about the really good job that the staff has done. There are a couple of things that came to mind as I was listening to my colleagues speak. It's interesting, both neighborhoods have terrific pasts. They're beautiful, historic neighborhoods. They have some really nice housing. I think everybody, I think I speak for everybody here when I say that we were all sort of neighborhood patriots, you know. And one of the nice things about this project was that a lot of other neighborhood patriots sort of came out of the woodwork and said some very constructive things, not always in agreement with one another, but good constructive things at the many meetings we attended over the course of the last year and a half. And over that time, you got a sense that the neighborhood is historic and beautiful, at the same time has tremendous potential. Both of these neighborhoods are real jewels for the city. They're close in. They're places where people would want to live because they can get into the downtown core really easily. At the same time, there are a number of potential elements in the neighborhoods that I think have, for a long time, been unrecognized by the city. I'll give you an example from Cessna. If you walk around certain parts of Cessna, you see you're in a very dense neighborhood. The housing is old, the parcels are very small, and one can say this is a high-density development, so to speak. At the same time, about 500 meters away, you can be in parts of Cessna where you feel like you're in a rural area. I mean, some people might regard that as sort of underutilized space, to use a term that Eunice just used a moment ago. Walk around, take a walk sometime if you have a moment. I know you guys are busy, but if you ever walk, take a walk out on Oxford Street, right, between Mission and McGilchrist. It's like a no man's land out there. All kinds of potential, close in to the downtown. So when you're thinking down the road, and I know this is going to come up because the city continues to grow, and there will be battles down the road about how Salem grows, the quality of the growth, and all those things. Think about the underutilized spaces, right, close into the downtown core, and the various kinds of things that can be used there. We got a chance through this neighborhood planning process to really work on that, right? And so you can build on that. And I'm hoping that, well, I'm confident that you won't put that on the shelf and leave it there and forget about it. But when the time comes to debate about the next round of growth in this town, that you take the thing off the shelf and you think about how can we use this land that's right near the downtown core better, more effectively, and in various creative ways. I'll say one other thing about creativity, and that is the process really gave us hope for some of the gateway streets in both neighborhoods, Market Street and State Street, because these two streets sometimes, well, have not lived up to their potential, let's just say, as gateways. And we're hoping that at the end of the process, especially after we've had this grant that comes in to look at State Street, that we're able to creatively address some of the problems that make the streets sometimes look rather miserable. And wouldn't maybe take all that much to enhance them and to have those corridors be worthy gateways into the downtown. We have a really nice downtown, and our neighborhoods are really nice, but those corridors don't reflect that in the ways that they could. And I think this process of discussion has sort of opened the door to some of the ways that we can get at that. So again, thank you very much for investing the resources that you have in this project. And I hope you will accept the staff report as it stands. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work you've done, Mr. Smaldone, in this project and other city projects. I'd like you, if you could expand a little bit about the underutilized property, Oxford Street, the whole sort of between McGilchrist and Mission. Did the group come up with any not policy statements, I understand, but maybe some recommended actions or some ideas about how that area can be developed? Because I don't walk there, but I've ridden my bike there, and I know what it's like.
Well, if you look at the area marked 11 and 12, those are areas we spent a lot of time discussing. The area 12, I mean, the zone is, let's just say, a rather mixed bag. Area 12 there is a residential neighborhood that was zoned for industrial development, but nothing ever happened. And it's been like that for decades. And so we've essentially, if I recall correctly, we're going to leave that housing there, okay? Which then raises questions about how that will integrate with the surrounding area, which is still largely commercial and industrially zoned. But if you walk that whole zone there around number 11, you'll see that it's mainly open space, fields. There are some businesses, there are some abandoned businesses. There's all kinds of space there. It's kind of lonely sometimes if you walk out there at a certain time of day. And we talked about some possibilities. There could be, some of us were thinking about mixed use, okay? There might be some reasons why housing would or wouldn't work in there, but there also might be some ways in which you could develop housing, commercial enterprise, maybe light industry. There could be a wide range of activities that could take place. It's got a lot of potential. But right now, it's a dead zone, and it's right near the downtown.
Yes, Councilor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for coming down, Bill. And it is kind of a no man's land in zone number 11, or area 51. And if you look at it, Hines is on the north and McGilchrist is on the south, and both of those still have Horn Railroad crossing versus Whistle Free. And I think once we get those fixed, that'll actually open up a lot of development potential for that area as well.
One issue there that came up in our meetings was that there's a lack of street connectivity, which would be a problem for developing housing. But I don't think anything is insurmountable in there. And because it's relatively open, there's a lot of potential. I think the city could have a very interesting conversation about the kind of development that goes in there, and that it could be the kind of development that is conducive to, let's just say, a higher quality of life in the inner city.
Yeah.
One other point. We've talked over the last, since I've lived in Salem, there's been a lot of discussion about how to improve 12th and 13th Streets. The businesses there all benefit from more foot traffic, okay, from the kinds of activity that would come with mixed use. Okay, and that's just a stone's throw away. So if you could develop that area in a way that would increase the activity of individuals on 12th and 13th Street, it would be a boost for both of those streets.
Yeah, and once we get McGilchrist fixed, so people aren't just stopped waiting for somebody to make a left turn somewhere along the line.
Right. Well, the McGilchrist thing, yeah. And by the way, we all recognize that McGilchrist is zoned for industrial development. Fine. Okay, but then the area behind it, right, going north, is much more open for.
And it's not heavy industrial, so there's not a lot of noise or emissions that drive people crazy as well. So I think it'll be a wonderful opportunity area.
Yeah, thanks.
And I would like to thank you as well. For those who don't know, Bill was a city councilor sitting here in Ward 2 seat and didn't stop once he left, and been very actively involved in the neighborhood. So thank you for staying involved.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate your service with the project and your other service in the community. Thank you. All right. We have in front of us Bill Leach, followed by Jeff Leach, followed by Bill Holmstrom.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening.
Many of my comments have already been brought up, so I won't be redundant in those. I just want to give you a little insight in the development of this. As far as the vision of State Street, something that kind of illustrates the vision that came out of the two neighborhoods for State Street is, as an exercise, we broke up into 3 different tables. We're all crowded around 3 different tables. what's your idea, what's your vision for State Street? The end result of these three tables was surprisingly similar and very compatible. And that, I think, was a good illustration of the consensus that the neighbors were able to come to there. The one thing I will be redundant in is my praise of the staff. Lisa and Eunice did a great job, and I really appreciate the work that they did. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions by councilors? Well, we appreciate you coming tonight and appreciate your work on this plan. Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Holmstrom, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, councilors. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Bill Holmstrom. I'm the chair of Northeast Neighbors. Very excited to be here tonight. I will also try to keep things brief because I think a lot of the things I was going to say have already been said. This process and this project, I think, really had two great benefits. One of them is, of course, we've got this great plan that came out of it, but the other one is the process that we went through. And like Bill said before me, a lot of folks came out who don't normally come to our neighborhood meetings to really talk and engage with us and in the process. And like Eunice said, we had over 200 participants at all of our meetings put together. Just a really fabulous, great chance for us to meet new people and for them to meet us. And the process itself was just fabulous. For the plan itself, of course, I'm very supportive of what came out of that. We all know that, like the rest of the city, our neighborhoods are going to grow and change over the next 20 years. We're mature neighborhoods, we're close in, we've been here a long time. Things are still going to change. And what we want to do with this plan, this is the first step, is to set a foundation for us to divert that growth into the places where we think it makes a sense for there to be change that's compatible with what we have already, and to make our neighborhoods better rather than just bigger and different. So we think this is a great start on that process. This is the end of the neighborhood plan process, but this is really just the beginning of taking what is in this plan and moving it forward. And we appreciate all of your support in helping to move that forward. The first step on that, like someone said before, was the city has received a grant to do some planning for State Street, and we're very excited to tackle that and kind of keep the process moving. We've got good momentum, and we're very excited about that. And I'll just conclude by being repetitive again by thanking folks. Glenn and his staff, Lisa and Eunice, you've heard it over and over and over again. But that's the reason is because you've got a really great staff here. You're very fortunate. And I just want to thank them very much for their guiding of the process. It's been great. I'd like to thank our friends over in Cessna. This was an interesting kind of going in with two neighborhoods together, and it worked really well. I was very pleased with how that worked. So I'd like to thank them for participating with us. I'd like to thank all the members of the steering committee. There were neighbors. I wasn't a member of that, but we had neighbors, some of whom you've already heard from tonight, who were on the steering committee, went to even more meetings, and to really guide this, and I'd like to thank them for their extra step of the way. And of course, I'd like to thank you, especially Councilor Bennett, Councilor Anderson and his predecessor, Councilor Tessler, for their support, but all of your support for giving us the resources in order to do this project. And I highly, for the next folks, the next set of neighborhoods, I would highly support them being able to have a chance to move forward and do a project as well. I think it was great for our neighborhoods, and I think it'd be great for other places in the city as well. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. We appreciate you coming down. Are there questions? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
I wonder, I'm intrigued by the two neighborhoods working together, and I can, if I understood right, this is the first time it's happened, and we have a lot of other neighborhoods that have a lot of, that are next to each other, that have some common, goals and aspirations and common situations that I look at. In fact, I came to a few of your meetings, the planning committee meetings, and the first one I came to was because 12th and 13th is right next to SCAN, and so I can see some connections there and what happens, and I'm wondering if you could you've said the process worked, but do you think this would have applicability based on your experience in other neighborhood groups combining for plans?
Certainly, I don't see why not. I think it maybe started off, I don't know all the motivations behind it, as an economical measure, try to get two birds with one stone, utilize your resources efficiently. But I think it ended up being not just that, but also we built some bridges across State Street, which is, the line between us, but it's also what connects our neighborhoods together. And moving forward, we're going to be able to make that with starting off with the next phase of what we're doing with this next plan to really build on State Street and our successes together as two different neighborhoods. I think that there's lots of places around the city where you could find that, certainly.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming. All right, we have Nancy McDaniel and Darren Brightman.
My name is Nancy McDaniel. I live at 265 21st Street Northeast, and I really don't have anything to add to what people have said before me. This is a great plan. It's been a long collaborative process, and I urge you to support it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from councilors? All right. Thank you for participating and coming this evening. Mr. Brightman, welcome. We haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a while. Darren Brightman. I live at 1498 Ferry Street Southeast. I'm a member of the Cessna Board. And without repeating everything everyone else has said, thank you to the city, to the staff. I would like to touch on one recommendation of the plan that occasionally raises eyebrows, and I just want our perspective to be presented to you. That is the matter of downzoning certain areas of the neighborhood. When the areas were rezoned from originally single family to residential, multifamily, high density, or even high-rise residential, that was 60s, possibly 70s. The expectation at the time was nobody wants these old 100-year-old houses. They're all going to move out to the suburbs. Someone's going to buy these little lots, tear them down, and build apartment complexes. That obviously did not happen. Even in the worst periods of the neighborhoods, they didn't lose enough value for people to assemble large parcels and tear everything down. What we did find is that a number of homes were converted to what the city calls room and board facilities, which are basically single room occupancy hotels. Those are very damaging to neighborhood values because of the transient nature of the residents and because of frequent maintenance problems and problems with landlords. So what we are looking at, there are two issues that come up when we talk about downzoning. One is density and one is property values. Some assume that a reduction in the density to which they can build their property is a reduction in their value. In this particular case, we have areas, actually the areas of Cessna that are currently zoned residential duplex. We've seen a lot more renovation of homes there already as single-family homes. Even though they're zoned residential duplex, they can be two-family. We have seen the areas that are zoned RM2 have a lot more conversions to the single-room occupancy, conversions to poorly maintained apartments, but even some of those are starting to come back now because people want to live close to the downtown core. The difficulty is certainty. Renovating one of these houses is not cheap. If you want to do it, you're going to put some money into it. And the last thing you want to do is spend 5 to 6 figures rehabbing a house to have the place next door become an SRO. So people don't buy in those areas. We even had someone come to the meetings who had looked at a historic home in the area zoned residential high-rise, decided not to buy it because she didn't know what would happen around it. So adding certainty would add value. Also, the city is concerned about having enough multifamily land. The residential duplex zone is still considered multifamily land, so it's not an impact from a state planning perspective. We also are wrapping it up.
I'm going to have to say your time is up. Can you quickly bring that to an end?
We're also very much in support of good density. Redeveloping State Street or other major corridors with higher density where it belongs is great. Accessory dwellings are great. We just want good density, not density for its own sake.
Fine. Thank you very much. Now, are there questions of Mr. Brightman? Yes, Mr. Councilor Benjamin.
I don't remember if there was any high-rise multifamily in that plan. Was there?
There is.
Okay. Was that anywhere near Area 11?
No.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. It's north of State Street here. Actually, the area marked number 3 that's in the dark brown there.
Okay.
So it's part of it's in the historic district, actually.
Okay. And now you were mentioning earlier, though, that if there was a high-rise type multifamily, somebody would be concerned about fixing up their 100-year-old home. Why would they put the money into it? Because they don't know what's going to happen. I'm just curious that if there's already a blank palette somewhere like Area 11, that's still close to the core, maybe that would be a better place to put multifamily high-rise because it's a blank palette, and then let it kind of grow from there. To help the economic engine, if you will, there's kind of two things the way I look at it. There is the businesses and manufacturing and whatnot, and then there's the people. So if you have a place where there's a lot of people, well, then somebody's going to want to put a business there in that way. And then in Area 11, it just could look like an opportunity. Thank you.
Agreed.
All right. Other questions, comments? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Was there anyone else who had come this evening who wanted to sign up but wasn't able to do so to testify during this public hearing? All right. Then we will go back to questions of staff. All right. Are there questions for staff? I think maybe, are there, Councilor Anderson?
First, I understand what the G and the A, or excuse me, the P and the A, but the G, I presume G is goals?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, and so how do the goals differ from A, which I'm calling aspirations in my own mind, but I know there was some other word you used.
Goals are the overarching kind of broad vision for what they want to do. The policies and the actions were underneath those.
Okay. Then specifically, I'm interested in, there were two things about traffic calming and gaps in the bike ped network, and they were listed as P. You're going to get to it? Yeah. So if that's the policy, then that's adopted into the plan, which was then adopted into the ordinance.
Yes, and what we did was we went through the Transportation System Plan, the TSP, and a lot of these projects, the bicycle and pedestrian improvements that were actually in the TSP, we prioritized them in the plan.
Okay. Then my next question, if I may, kind of segues into that in terms of where do we go from here, and specifically I'm thinking of where do we go from here in two issues. One are the ones we just talked about, traffic calming, gaps in the bike ped network, but also I'm interested in the downzoning that Mr. Smallone talked about, and so did Darren. You know, what happens next?
So we've actually spent some time, Lisa in particular, making sure that the departments in the city were aware of our neighborhood plan and some of the recommendations in it. So the idea would be, like I was saying earlier, if Public Works was looking at some of these pedestrian bicycle facility projects, in the TSP they could say, well, these are the ones that Nen and Cessna actually want to do and prioritize those. In terms of downzoning, that is very conceptual. We didn't dive into too much detail in terms of exactly how any of that would work. And so we don't really have a plan right now to say, bring forward some sort of recommendation to the council saying we would like to move this forward. But it is something I think that we want to keep in mind, especially as we do look at multifamily housing in the future, accessory dwelling units, and other recommendations related to housing.
Thank you very much. Then one comment, I guess it's directed at the city manager, or a question. Yeah. If I were to want to start that process, how would I do that? Would I make a recommendation? Would I?
To start the process
of the downzoning?
Yes, you would need to, let me think about that for a minute, do a motion, I guess, a council motion to ask staff to bring back a report.
To spend the staff time more than an hour, do that motion, and then see if I could get a second.
Mr. Gross, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
You know, one element here, I'm sorry, I'm Glenn Gross, I'm the Community Development Director. One element here that we haven't really touched on tonight that's coming, and is the housing need analysis. Yeah. We just completed a local housing need analysis with help from a consultant Eunice worked on that project as well. She's very familiar with it. We'll need to look at zoning for multifamily overall.
Sure.
In terms of that. I'm thinking we could probably have at least begin the conversation about the possibilities of downzoning some areas for multifamily and upzoning other areas for multifamily as part of that project, if that works for the counselor.
At least it would work for this counselor, and I got some good sidebar advice from Council President Nanke that I should probably talk to you first.
That was my hesitation. Yeah, it's a major issue.
You
and
can
so
give
it
me
needs
that
some
kind
more
of advice, too.
discussion. Okay.
Councilor Nanke, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And it goes back to the question I asked of Ms. Lloyd earlier as well, in regards to, pedestrian pathways, knowing that you're in an older neighborhood that has very mature trees that people are very fond of. How would you deal with something like that right there? Can we build a substandard sidewalk?
Well, I mean, in that picture right there, the only solution would be to acquire additional right-of-way to put the sidewalk behind the trees, if we wanted to save the trees. And I've looked at D Street, I've looked at Park Street, there where there are a number of trees, D Street, around the state hospital site. And really, the only solution that makes sense to put in sidewalks, it would be to acquire, to either put the sidewalk in an additional easement or to acquire additional right-of-way to be able to have that connection and not impact the canopy there along the edges of the street.
Right, and I know a lot of the lots in those areas are fairly small as well, so trying to catch the backside of them may be coming up to where you can shake hands with the homeowner.
So it becomes very difficult. There are opportunities, if streets are wider than standard, to put the sidewalk on the other side of the curb, into the asphalt. But I'd be hesitant to say that for D or Park because those are important streets. So that's something we would consider if there was a wide local street, if there was a wider collector street, then we could consider that. There's only so much room, and the plan speaks to it, and the folks tonight spoke to it. What do you do inside the room? Trees, travelways, sidewalks, bicycle lanes. It's what we suffer from downtown. Sometimes we have to compromise. Something's got to give if we want everything. So the question is, what gives?
Yeah. And sometimes it may just be one side of the street rather than both
it could
sides
be
as
exactly right. So those are the kinds of things that then we need to consider.
Thanks.
All right, Councilor Benars. Yes.
I just wanted to delve in. We've talked a little bit about bicycle transportation, automobile transportation, the linking on some of these major streets. I want to address the issue of we've lost 2 individuals on Center Street at this point. It's right in the middle of, I think it would be Nen. And are we addressing anywhere in this plan basically pedestrian crossings, lighting issues so that people are being seen basically?
We have talked a lot about different ways to make pedestrian crossings safer. We looked at both projects that are in the TSP and other areas where they would like to see improvements, whether it's through signalized kind of pedestrian crossings or islands and other things like that. And we have spoken a lot about lighting as well.
So any of these the newfangled lights that are over on 12th Street or over here on the other side of the Civic Center, those kinds of ideas?
We have talked at length about different ideas with Kevin especially, yes.
It's just a tragedy, and I'm trying to figure out if there's got to be a better way. It's just a tragedy that should be avoided. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. I'm going to close this hearing and ask Councilor Bennett, do you have a motion for this public hearing?
I do, Madam Mayor. I move the recommended action.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Benars. Is there discussion, Councilor Bennett?
Yeah, just briefly, Madam Mayor. Well, as briefly as I can be on this thing. This motion calls for a public hearing on this ordinance and adopting it into SRC Chapter 64, which is our comprehensive planning document, and then holding another public hearing and ultimately advancing this to a second reading. Right? Yeah, this is the one. Okay. And we want to advance this to a second reading. Madam Mayor, I had a chance to really actively participate in this and to work with other councilors several budget cycles ago to get the money for this project, and was really excited with the outcome. It was, I think everyone described it as neighborhood building. It was really beyond that. It was very, very good. And I hope a number of neighborhoods start looking at it. I was particularly interested in seeing if Grant and Highland were interested. I know that Lansing and Nesca are. This is a great project. This is a really good way to involve members of the community in something they care a lot about. Though there were several aspects of this, I'll just highlight one of them I'm very interested in, had set as a council goal, which is work on State Street. I really am convinced that portion of this plan with the grant really gives us a tremendous opportunity to kind of kickstart this process. And so I'm very hopeful we can this year really get that one going aggressively. And then just finally, if you were involved in this, and everyone's mentioned, and I'll do the same thing, you cannot say enough about Lisa and Eunice's work on this. It really was a model of public involvement, of using our time with tremendous care in terms of its value as citizens coming out. Meetings started, the work got explained, the work got done, and the meeting ended. And it was very, very well done. If you have a chance in any of your neighborhoods to have this happen, be sure to do it. This is just an excellent opportunity. And then, as councilors, I'd participate. Don't pass up the opportunity if it's in one of yours or one you're interested in. This is a great process to participate in.
That's great. Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All of Cessna is in my ward, and the lower right quadrant of Nen, as you look at it there, the southeast corner, is also in my ward. So, and it's next to, it abuts on Scan, which is a neighborhood where I've been involved for years and years and years. So I followed this process quite closely. You know, it's getting to be a broken record here, but thank you for the good staff work. And I also want to thank the neighborhood groups. I attended 2 or 3 of these meetings, 3 or 4, I think, and I was very, the people there took their job seriously, and they listened to all points of view, and it was terrific. So I'm going to vote for this enthusiastically. The only caveat I had is one that was expressed by Mr. Smaldone. We want to make sure that this doesn't put on the shelf someplace as an excellent study, that nothing ever came out from that study. And I can see that at least right now it's not, because we're already working on the State Street.
That's right. And I can let you know that I asked Lisa to come and present it to a regular meeting I have of the department head and division managers, so they would all be aware of this and understand what the neighborhood's priorities and goals were. So we'll make sure that it doesn't just become a stale plan, that we refer to it often and see what we can do to implement the recommendations.
Great. Well, I'd like to just add my own thoughts about this. You know, many of you have heard me say that this is the collaboration capital, and this is proof. When you look at the list of the acknowledgments, even state agencies and the Christian Church and so many organizations and businesses, and when you look at the list of the citizens that were participating, it's really heartwarming to me. I'm so happy to see this. And in fact, I've taken this out of my binder, and I'm not giving this back to the staff. I'm keeping this because I just think this is a wonderful plan, and I want to be able to have time to really look at it more in depth. Along the lines with the State Street, Councilor Bennett was working on the State Street idea several years ago and has kept it kind of in the front of our minds, and I've asked him from time to time as mayor, I will ask a councilor to spearhead a certain project or a task force or a committee, and I've asked him to really be the spear on the State Street with the grant and to really drive that forward, obviously collaboratively with other counselors and the neighborhoods. But sometimes a project needs a real champion, and Councilor Bennett has been the champion for State Street for a long time. So, Councilor Bennett, thank you for being willing to do that. I really appreciate that. So, where there were other comments, I think Councilor Lewis, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is the third time I've got to sit through this presentation. It was twice on the Planning Commission. We had a work session and then the public hearing, and then this evening, and it gets, quite frankly, more exciting each time. I think at the public hearing of the Planning Commission, I referred to this as a big boy plan, and it certainly is. This is a true big city plan. I can't tell you how impressed I am. And for mostly the reasons that's been spoken tonight, the collaboration, the involvement, the effort on the city's part. You know, at the Planning Commission, I think it was Professor Smaldone that used the example of the Hawthorne District in Portland, and certainly on paper, this reflects that. I mentioned that evening that growing up in the Hawthorne area of Portland, that is something that evolved over time. So you can put it on paper, but you have to be patient while it happens. Mm-hmm. And this is a tremendous plan, but it will take a lot of work to come to fruition. But the plan is exactly the way it should be. My only other comment, and it was mentioned by a couple of people tonight, and that is about the downzoning. And I recognize that we have, as the study showed, a shortage of multifamily. But in this area of Salem, if it is in fact true that this neighborhood plan has taken and readjusted the multifamily so they can now legitimately downsize areas where it is single family, then I think the city should look seriously at doing it, because that point of valuation is true. People are not going to come in and invest in single family homes when down the street they don't know what's going to go in there. And so before that investment will happen, they need to know what's going to be in the neighborhood. And so if it's appropriate to have that downsizing because the plan calls for that multifamily and that high density somewhere else, then I think in fairness to the plan, we should look at doing that as soon as we can. Mm-hmm. So I'm certainly in favor of the motion.
Sounds like a good idea for goal setting.
All right. Yes, Councilor McCoy.
You know, it's that City Manager Norris brought up a point. I think it's very important. I'd like to reiterate or support that notion. And you know, I've worked for years in nonprofit associations on all kinds of boards, and we've gone through strategic planning. It's spent a ton of money and it's spent a time, and it went on a shelf, never to be looked at again. And I read this, and I was fascinated, and impressed by the detail that went into this, and obviously the great thought and care. And if you look at it, they took care of a neighborhood, or two neighborhoods, from the fairgrounds all the way down to Madrona Avenue. I mean, we're covering a lot of area there, and they addressed all different areas of both neighborhoods. And so I would urge, and I'm pretty sure this will happen, the two neighborhood associations to make sure that this is considered every time some development or some movement for some development in different areas, or there's money becomes available. Make sure that this is being considered as part of those discussions, A, and B, make sure the city staff is cognizant that this is there and it's not sitting on a shelf, that it is referred to as we look forward to the different projects we're working on around the city that affect these two neighborhoods, and really congratulate the two neighborhood associations for getting over 200 people involved. That's impressive. I don't care where you are and what kind of organization running, getting 200 people to sit down and generate this kind of report is really impressive. So certainly I'll be supportive of this.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
Mr. Gross
I'm sorry, Mr. Gross did have his hand up. Thank you.
Just a real brief one. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I really appreciate all the compliments for Lisa and Eunice. They certainly deserve it. They worked very hard, and they did a great job on this. But they would be the first to tell you that the quality of this work is also a reflection of the teamwork that went into it. We had a lot of help. They had a lot of help from Public Works, from Urban Development, tremendous amount of teamwork and collaboration. And I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge those departments as well.
Thank you. All right, if there are no further comments, I will now close this public hearing and entertain the motion that is on the table. Is that the correct order? We do have a motion on the floor. Sorry. So I closed the motion I closed the public hearing after. It's been closed. It was just closed. It was already closed.
Yeah.
Really close.
Now it's
Really.
So there is a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. We'll take a little breather for just a moment here. I think maybe there are quite a few people that would like to move around or maybe leave. So we'll take a moment or two away. On the plan, I suppose now you're all going to go out and have a party, which you deserve to have. So thanks again for being here and for all your work. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll call the City Council back into session. And we are at the point of special orders of business. We have two items that were pulled from the consent calendar. And I'm going to start with item 3.3B. Councilor Lewis, do you have a motion regarding that item?
I do. For the purpose of discussion, I'm going to move staff recommendation on agenda item 3.3B.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Lewis and seconded by Councilor Benars. Councilor Lewis, do you have discussion on that item?
You got two options tonight. One, you got the option of listening to discussion that's taken me over 10 years to collect, or two, I'm going to just stay with the motion and leave it up to you folks on what you want to do.
All right. Are there other comments? Yes, Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm going to offer a substitute motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for first reading to increase the number of planning commissioners from 7 to 9.
All right. And it's a substitute motion?
Yes.
All right. Is there a second to the substitute motion?
I'll second for discussion.
All right. It's been moved by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Nanke. And Councilor Bennett, do you have discussion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Right.
Madam Mayor, I understand the idea here. I think it's an interesting one, but I think that designating seats on the Planning Commission for any profession is a real mistake. And, you know, we could have 2 lobbyists, we could have 2 lawyers, we could have 2 executive directors, and we still wouldn't have used up all 9. But we'd have made sure that we sort of had 2 of these various professions. I think this is just a mistake. I was appointed to the Planning Commission, I don't know, 9 years ago or so, in the midst of a lot of publicity about the makeup of the Planning Commission, and was appointed from among 9 highly qualified people because I wasn't involved in the real estate industry, and they needed somebody who wasn't in the real estate industry on that 7-member board at that time, or wasn't somehow identified. And I use that term very, very loosely because I think it gets used very loosely. I am just concerned that to designate these seats is to take a step backwards rather than a step forwards. We just interviewed 8 or 9 people for the Planning Commission. None of them were from the real estate industry, and all, I think we would all agree, very highly qualified. Any one of those people, if not all of them, could have served on the Planning Commission. With that in mind, I really like the idea of adding 2 commissioners. I think it makes it closely mirror our other major citizen committee, which is the Budget Committee, that has 9 members. There are other activities and commissions and committees that expect Planning Commission member to be involved. I think this adds to the pool of potential people to take those activities on, like Downtown Advisory Board and some of the others. So I think that part of this motion is a really good one. I really like that. I think expanding it, always enlarging citizen involvement in something as important and as controversial as planning is a good idea. So I'd ask you to support it. I support the motion. I think we would avoid a whole bunch of future problems if we steer away from the portion designating seats on that board for specific professions.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I came here tonight thinking that I would oppose both the moving from 7 to 9 as well as the 1 to 2 on the real estate agency, but in his eloquence, Councillor Bennett has convinced me that 9 is a good idea. I agree with him completely on the designation, and I guess I would point out, looking at this as a lawyer, the law just puts that as an upper limit, the state law. It doesn't say you have to have that. It says you can have up to that many. So we're in compliance with state law now. One of the reasons given here is this would put us in compliance with state law. Well, we already are. We'd be in compliance with state law if we had 0 people from the real estate industry. It's just you can have up to 2. And then I echo Councillor Bennett's comments that it sure doesn't seem to me like we have any problem with getting people for the Planning Commission. And I wasn't on the council when the last, but I saw there were 5 or 6 applicants for one position, and they all looked very qualified to me. So I will support the substitute motion.
Is there further discussion? Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The pool of planning commissioner candidates that were apparent to us the other day is not indicative of past performance. Knowing that it's really been a struggle, and I know even moving that to 9 would have been unthinkable. We talked about actually designating them in wards similar to Budget Committee as well, and we steered away from that just because of potential for vacancies as well. Very supportive of moving up to the 9. If state law allows us to have 2 members in real estate, and the only reason they're designated is because the state did it, as well as 2 people from some other profession that may have nothing to do with real estate or nothing to do with anything that ever comes before the Planning Commission, we lose potentially superb candidates down the road. And I actually support staff recommendation to give us maximum flexibility as we move through the future as well.
I have a question. When you say support the staff recommendation, but the staff recommendation, I believe, is
not what's on the table right now.
Is not what's on the table right now. Okay.
Correct. Staff recommendation is 2 from any profession, as well as because of the way state regulations pull out real estate personnel.
Up to 2.
Up to 2.
Up to 2 in each of those categories.
And my position that why would we not use that up to 2 potential inside? Doesn't mean we have to fill them, depending on the pool of candidates we have. But if you have a couple of people that are involved in 2 really different aspects of real estate, it can also really serve as a benefit to the Planning Commission just for knowledge. And I think the staff report was written very well in that regard as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bernard.
I, too, will not be supporting the motion as it stands at this point. I have had considerable thought about this. One is, I think the 9 people is a good move. Almost all of our boards and commissions in the city are 9 members, with a rare exception. And 2 is that so many of the other communities where we compare ourselves, and I don't like always comparing, but many of the other communities we compare ourselves to in size and flavor in the state of Oregon have 2 of similar background, or allow 2 of similar vocation on their boards and commissions. Salem was the one odd one that was not doing it or allowing it. I think if it works in other communities, it would work here. And having been on the boards and commissions committee, I've looked at the applicants. There are a lot of great people, but in many ways, having some people in the area that they're discussing the issues of who deal with it makes just logical sense, because there's just so much to know in the area of planning and development.
Thank you. Councillor Dickey.
Yeah, I have a question for staff. Because I know we've had so many discussions about this, allowing up to 2 people that are principally engaged in buying, selling, or developing of real estate. Do we have a comprehensive definition of what that actually means? Because I think that's where I have struggled, is what, I mean, you can say, I'm a real estate broker, and you have your name on a sign, you drive down the street, the property's for sale. That's really easy. But some of the behind the scenes and other kinds of things that are going on and other kinds of related professions, that's where it gets really tricky, and where you could end up with, well, gee, we already have 2 on here, but this person isn't, they don't have their name on the sign when you're driving down the street, so how are they related? So do we have a comprehensive definition of this that would kind of help guide and to understand exactly what we're talking about?
And Mr. Atchison, I think, is going to respond.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. It's not defined in state law, and the Salem Revised Code provision here is basically just analog what state law provides, other than the 2 versus the 1. It's not defined in state law, it's not defined in our code, so you just kind of refer to a dictionary definition. So, principally engaged is the majority of their business may come from that. So yeah, in some ways it might be helpful to include a specific definition. In the past, council has had considerable discretion in how they applied that. If you want to hem council in and hem yourselves in as far as what you consider to be principally engaged in real estate or in the same trade or profession, which is also very broad terms, it's kind of up to council and how closely they want to regulate themselves on that. A couple other points since I have the floor. One, as the other councilor mentioned, this code amendment wouldn't require us to have 2 members of the same profession or 2 members of real estate be on the planning commission. It only allows up to 2. There's also the 2 different restrictions. There's 2 members of real estate or 2 members of the same trade and profession, as Councilor Nackey was referring to. If you wanted to limit that, and real estate is your concern, then I would really urge you to at least allow up to 2 members of the same trade or profession, because if you're going to increase the membership to 9, that issue is going to come up time and again.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I read this and studied it in preparation this weekend, I've just got this almost sounds like it's a solution looking for a problem in some cases for me. It started out with the commissions, the appointments committee saying, let's increase it to 2. Went to the city council, who referred it to planning commission for a hearing, who had a hearing and turned the whole thing down. And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, they decided to revisit the issue, have 2 hearings, and come to it with basically, let's go to 2 and 2 and go from 7 to 9. And now we've got another motion saying, no, we don't want to go to 9. We want to go to 9, but we don't want to go to the 2 and 2. So we've gone from the committee saying go to 2 and 2 and don't go to 9, to turning it all down, to going to 2 and 2 and go to 9, and now we're saying, no, let's go to 9 and dump the 2 and the 2. So,
welcome to City Council.
I'm looking at this. I'm looking at a circular deal here, and it's not making a whole lot of sense to the new guy on the City Council right now. So. So I don't know where this is all going, but I've got a big question mark. Is this even needed at this point? So am I going to support what we're debating right now? No, I'm not. Okay. And I'll wait to think about the original motion after we get done with this.
All right, and I saw Councilor Lewis's hand up.
Yeah, the answer to the issue for me is in the purpose of the Planning Commission. And I think I find the answer in the staff report. They seem to value the level of experience that they get from real estate related people on the Planning Commission. You hear from some that experience should come from the staff. I don't see staff agreeing with that, and I don't. Here's why. The experience that most staff people have comes from, and I'll use the term planning school, not the practical aspect of the business. The practitioners are the ones that you will find on the Planning Commission. That practical aspect, that practical experience, is why the staff generally ask for that kind of support when they do things like updating the development code. They reach out to the practitioners. That's why they look for that type of expertise. That's probably why they want to limit the number on the planning commissions. And that's why the law says limit it, because they don't want planning commissions overwhelmed with that type of expertise. They don't want the development, the real estate community in charge of the planning commissions. So they limit it. Most boards and commissions have requirements for expertise. Look at your landmarks, your Historic Landmarks Commission. They require 5 of their members to have designations. Planning Commission is different. I believe there's a recognition that that expertise is desirable, but they don't want it to be overwhelming. Currently, there is one principally engaged person who is, their main function in life is buying and selling or developing real estate for profit. Let's say we're in New York City and Donald Trump wants to be on the Planning Commission. There's an example of somebody who's principally engaged in the buying, selling, or developing of real estate. We could probably identify somebody in a similar category here in Salem. I'm not going to use any names. But if you limit it to just one person, I don't think that's enough expertise. So you argue constantly that you only can have one person in the same business. Well, a real estate agent and a lender are 2 different businesses. But yet we hear from folks in the community, oh no. If there's any connection, then it's the same business. I used the example in the Planning Commission public hearing that an insurance salesman, I asked the question, is an insurance salesman a real estate person? And the answer was no. Well, what if the insurance salesman is a member of the Realtor Association because they do homeowner policies? Well, then yes. The purpose of moving to 2, quite frankly, was to not end, but limit the argument. If you limit it to 2, you're gonna limit the argument, in my opinion. If you want to have 1, then the argument will continue at the level it's been continuing. And I, for one, will continue to argue that that experience is needed on the Planning Commission. And I'll continue to argue that way. And I will have to vote no on the substitute motion.
Councillor Bennett.
Well, it's an interesting argument. We can't do it with 1. We've been unable in this city to do it with a limit of 1. And you can argue all you want about who's who and what's what in terms of professions. When I went on, the argument was it was totally dominated by the real estate industry or some aspect of it. And it was true. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. Serving on the Planning Commission, that's exactly what was going on. There's nothing wrong, and I don't think anything untoward happened. In fact, with a limit of 1, they had 6 people engaged in real estate as some members of the community saw it, and 1 who wasn't. And they probably could have looked at me and said, because I own some property and I'm a landlord, I'm probably in it too. But right now, to say somehow making 2 instead of 1 changes that is beyond me. That has not been a problem. Given what the city attorney said in terms of the definition, this really loose definition of what the real estate industry in this context means, that Planning Commission has been both packed and unpacked with representatives of the development real estate community. And it's been done perfectly, I think, with everyone's eyes open. But that was with one. I don't quite understand why we need to go to two and double down on what has been a highly, and I think no one can disagree, it has been highly controversial in this community over the years. There's no question. I see no reason to double down on the controversy and call again into question, again, twice as often, because there's two, whether or not this council is appointing people just because they're in the real estate industry, or, and then all the other suggestion that goes with it. There's no reason for that. There's no reason to change that portion of this ordinance. It's worked. It has worked in this community and not worked in this community. I just don't quite understand the need. And saying somehow there's a limit of 2, that's just not true. There's a limit of 9, depending on how you define it. And that's how this has been done by this city council over the years. We happen to be in a period now where there are fewer real estate involved folks on the commission, but that doesn't mean that won't turn around over time given this loosey-goosey definition. I'm just suggesting that at this point, with this level of definition, it is absolutely a mistake to double down on what has been a bad idea over the years.
Okay. Well, I'd like to speak to the motion. I won't be supporting the substitute motion, and the reason is because I believe that there is a value to seeking out individuals with expertise and knowledge in real estate or development, and to limit ourselves to only one person from that industry or business, real estate or development, when cities across the state are functioning perfectly well within the ORS guideline by having 2. It seems to me that the city of Salem is limiting itself and limiting the people who can serve, excuse me, in a volunteer capacity on the Planning Commission. I feel the same way about the limitation on 2 people from the same business or industry. Why would we limit ourselves when a qualified applicant wants to serve, but because we already have someone, for instance, who's in the dairy products business, who we may have another person in the dairy products business who would be a very fine member of the Planning Commission, but we won't let that person serve, even though their credentials and experience would be helpful. So I won't be supporting that motion, and my reason is that I believe that other cities have found the guideline of no more than 2 to be satisfactory and in fact helpful. And I think it's time for Salem to grow up to the belief in the integrity of the council. And I think Councilor Bennett is absolutely correct. Right now, you do not see a proportionate number of people who've been wiggled onto that Planning Commission because of an engineering by the Boards and Commissions Committee and then by the City Council to stack the deck, if you want to say it that way. The integrity of our Boards and Commissions Committee, I think, has been exemplary, and the same thing with the Council. And I have no doubt that we'll continue to do that. And having up to 2 in the category of the same business and up to 2 with business or real estate or development experience, I think will just simply strengthen our Planning Commission. Councilor Benars.
One short comment. I was doing a little research this afternoon, and we have 13 boards and commissions that the city has that we have to staff with volunteers. We have 29 open positions on those 13 boards. I counted them today. And more than half of those have requirements of you have to live in, or you have to be partake, or Planning Commission has to be a member over here on the other end. I'm just saying, difficult to fill positions.
Then councilors need to get to work, Councilor.
That's true. Councilor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm sympathetic to Councilor Bennett's comments, and I know them to be somewhat true, but as soon as the rules are as loosey-goosey as they are with the requirement for 1, and knowing that, previous city councils have been almost entirely of a real estate or development nature at times as well. Probably could have been the appointees of that planning commission as well over the years. It'd be nice to see if other cities have some better definition or another restriction on trying to define what that means, because I could own a Nanky's pie factory and do very little there, and as long as it didn't equate to over 50% of my profit, I could be selling real estate and I wouldn't be principally involved, even though I may be doing more than anyone else. So the definition is really weak, but that comes back to council makeup and those people who are available and trying to find that balance inside of our community. So it's a tough one. But anytime you can give people breadth to work inside of, I think is a good thing. Will people take advantage of it sometimes? Definitely.
All right, Councillor Dickey.
I just want to concur with Councillor Bennett or Councillor Nanke on the definition. I know, having sat on that boards and commissions committee, I mean, we get so many applications and reviewing them, and then trying to remember, you know, what are the parameters we're supposed to be appointing to, and we, like someone said, we have other committees that have different requirements, and the planning commission especially, it's trying to figure out what are those exact parameters, and then that helps that committee be able to make the best decision to recommend to council. So I don't know if there's some way to tighten it up or make it more clear, or giving some sideboards to the boards and commissions committee so that they're able to better make a decision. I mean, those meetings sometimes went for hours, it seemed like, just because, you know, we sat there trying to figure out the definition of one of these parameters. So that would be my only comment. It would be nice to have at least a little more definitive, and the same with the engaging in the same kind of business, trade, or profession. You know, that's very broad. I don't know if there's a way to put some sidebars around that to at least give a little guidance to boards and commissions, but if there is, that would be great.
Okay, any further comments? We have a motion on the floor, a substitute motion by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Nanke. Councillor Bennett, would you like to repeat your motion?
Well, sure. Yeah, I am move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for first reading to increase the number of planning commissioners from 7 to 9.
All right. The motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. All right. Will the nays please raise your hands so the clerk can count your votes? Okay, take your names. Okay. Councillor Nanke, Councillor McCoy, Councillor Dickey, Councillor Bednarz, Councillor Lewis, and Mayor Peterson against. All right. Motion fails. So we're back to the original motion by Councillor Lewis. Councillor Lewis, your motion is on the floor. Do you want to speak further to your motion, or are we ready for the vote?
I'm ready for the vote.
All right, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the original motion made by Councillor Lewis and seconded by Councillor... Who seconded that one? Councillor Bednarz, thank you very much. All right, the original motion, all those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Dickey, you had a question?
Yeah, could Councillor Lewis repeat his motion?
Yes, certainly. Councillor Lewis?
Yes, I move staff recommendation that directs staff to prepare an ordinance for first reading to allow up to 2 planning commission members to engage principally in the buying, selling, or developing of real estate for profit, and up to 2 planning commission members to be engaged in the same kind of business, trade, or profession, and to increase the number of planning commission members from 7 to 9.
All right, the motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay.
Nay.
And the nays are Councillors Bennett and Anderson. Thank you. The motion passes. Did I catch all of the nays?
I think so.
I did. All right, good. Thank you. All right, we have another item that was pulled for consideration, item 3.3D by Councilor Bennett. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Nanke. Councilor Bennett, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This authorizes the city manager to continue our 3-hour on-street parking time limit in downtown Salem. Continues the same hours, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Continues the $3 daily permit for part-time employees. All of this continues through February 3rd, 2016. And also includes transferring $32,300 of appropriation authority from the general fund contingencies to help pay for this whole program. As you recall, we put the 3-hour limit on after responding to the petition for that was circulated with 6,000 voters signing it, saying we want completely unlimited parking downtown. In response to a real outcry from the downtown businesses that this absolutely was not working. We were getting no churn in parking. The place was filling up with employees, residents, and people who came downtown for the full day cup of coffee or whatever they were doing. And the result was really a lot of problems for downtown businesses. So in response to a group of business folks that got together, we brought that back down to this current program. And in dealing with them, and they have done, I think, quite a good job of reaching out to the entire downtown community, but they need more time. This is, we've all been, well, those of us who've been through this feel like we've all been through it. But if you've been through this parking thing, it is sort of a slow and laborious process working to get people to, number one, to engage, and then you always hope, and I think it may be one of those just things you sort of set out in the future and hope will happen, that there'll be some sort of consensus. So what we're asking you to do is join us in that hope tonight that over the next year, this downtown group, other groups, members of the council, members of neighborhood groups will work further toward some sort of real consensus on dealing with the parking question, including the churn, the needs of businesses for loading zones, and a whole range of times. The mayor and I were at a meeting, and Councilor Anderson were at a meeting the other evening where we heard a range of requests for parking from 15 minutes to the whole day. You know, it's that kind of range you hear discussed. So there is quite a bit of discussion still to be had in terms of figuring out when, where parking can be varied, and then paying for this thing. Where there is absolutely no solution at this point for how to pay for this whole program, both its operations, but even more particularly, its capital costs, which are currently borne by the Urban Renewal Agency. You may not see it right away, but you will eventually see it because it will come to you as a capital improvement because something has failed in the parking garages, whether it's elevators or concrete's dropping on cars or whatever the problem is. So there's still a lot of undecided stuff, but I think after listening to the discussion and working on this now for several years, I think we really owe it to ourselves and to that downtown community to give them another year to keep working this thing. Doesn't mean we have to wait a year. If anyone walks in here and says, I've got 500 businesses that say, let's go with, and you name it, jump. Make the motion as fast as you can. We'll all vote real quick and get out of here because it will have been a moment in history. But we're going to continue to work with them on this. There's a lot of work to be done. So I hope you'll support this.
Great. Councilor Anderson.
I think I'm learning so far, and what I'm going to do right now is make a substitute motion. And the only change I make is that the daily permit for part-time employees be $2 and not $3. We heard discussion of this at the meeting that the city manager, the mayor, and Councilor Bennett and I were there, and I think that's a valid point with its part-time people. I can't say anything else, right? Because nobody's
second for discussion, so he can finish his sentence.
Okay, thank you. That could be dangerous.
Yeah.
I think if I were looking at this entire thing in a vacuum, I would also be concerned about the 3 to 4 hour difference. You know, it's moving 3 hours to 4 hours. But I think that this has been so back and forth, and we can't just turn around and make changes. We need to put something in effect, and we need to put that out to the public, and we need a long period of time to really analyze what's going on. We saw some statistics at the meeting we were at, but that was just a short period of time, and I think the longer we have to get the correct information, the better it is. But I think that $2 for part-time employees is not something that goes out to the public as much as changing it to 3 to 4, if we change it from 3 to 4. That's just another thing for the public to say, geez, doesn't the council know what it's doing? Whichever way the wind's blowing, it changes things. But I think that $3 to $2 is helpful for the part-time employees down there, and that may get more of them off the street, and that may accomplish another one of the goals.
Okay, so now we have a substitute motion on the floor made by Councilor Anderson and seconded by Councilor Nanke. And Councilor Anderson has offered his comments and discussion. I think our city manager is trying to say something.
Yes. There was a reason that we went with $3 instead of $2 because, and I'll ask Mr. Rex if he can come up and talk about that in more detail if you're ready to do that, Doug. Or Mr. Scott, if you want to do that.
Thank you, Rick Scott, Interim Urban Development Director. It's really a simple math problem for us. Going to $2 permit actually means that you could purchase a permit for the month that would actually be cheaper than our monthly full-time permit. And so that's why this issue came up, I believe, when council first made their motion, and the reason that we chose the $3 was because of that.
Yeah, and we can't restrict it to part-time downtown employees. Yeah.
Right, right. All right, so there is a substitute motion on the floor to support the motion with the change from $3 a day to $2 a day for the daily permit. All those in favor of the substitute motion, please signify by saying aye. All right, motion failed. That's the end of that. All right, now we're back to the, that's a first.
Yeah, I'm convinced of that. That's a good argument.
That's, you got convinced. That's good. Okay. All right, we're back to the original motion made by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Benars, I believe. Was that correct?
No, I seconded.
Councilor.
I was distracted.
Thank you, Councilor Nanke. All right, so we're back to the original motion, and we've had discussion on the original motion. And is there further discussion? I saw Councilor Benars had his hand up, and then Councilor Lewis.
One is just a procedural thing here. We have the issue, and then we have the recommendation, and they seem like they're one and the same, all 4 bullet points. Am I wrong about that? I mean, in other words, the first part is that we extend the time parking thing from, okay, Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 and $3 for the daily permit, and the transferring of the funds.
Yeah.
That's what
they're the
we're
same.
voting on now.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So then the second question I had was this is an example where we're not taking money from the URA like we have been in the past to transfer money into the parking district?
Not exactly. What are
No,
city managers
we would still, if we had capital costs at this point, even with this, we would still need to be able to rely on URA funds for that. We'll be doing some elevator work actually right now, and that money is coming from the
I guess my point was is that we've been transferring. We talk about that the district is struggling on its own finances, and that we've been taking money from the URA for capital improvements. This is not one of those examples. This is an example where we're doing it for a maintenance issue, because you've got to maintain people.
No, that's
It doesn't
not correct.
change
Back
that
up.
circumstance. We would still need to use the urban riverfront URA money for capital projects. This just sets the 3-hour non-paid time limit. So we still don't have money coming into the system except for whatever additional permits we might be selling. So it's only if we ever got to paid parking downtown would we be able to reduce the reliance on the Urban Renewal Fund for capital maintenance.
I don't think I'm making my point clear.
Okay, I'm sorry. Asking about
the 32,300.
Well,
yes, that is coming from general fund contingency. I'm so sorry.
And it's
I missed
done
it.
that always
because
has, hasn't it? Come from general fund
Yes.
for the staffing.
Yeah, you can't use
For
urban
staffing.
renewal money for this purpose.
Right. That's what I wanted to clarify.
I'm sorry,
Thank
I
you.
misunderstood you.
All right, are there further questions? Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One, I wanted to make sure the study that it's talking about in the staff report, that study will also include the usage of the parking garages. I want to make sure we have a good understanding of how the occupancy use is in those. And second, I hear this from a number of people. They like to come downtown after work, and they get down here around 10 after 5. They park, but they're a little hesitant because 3 hours makes it 10 after 8. And they're really wondering, are you really out there enforcing the parking at 10 after 8?
We are. With this ordinance, we enforce the parking until 9. People can, in that circumstance, I know it's not convenient, but you can move your car to the next block and be fine, or go into a parking structure.
Sometimes they forget around 7:30 where they are. Or,
that's right.
I mean, not me, but, so my question is it crucial to the process to have it go till 9, or could it go till 8?
The downtown group talked about that quite a bit, and the problem is they want to avoid people coming and parking at 5 o'clock and staying all night. One restaurant owner in particular talked about they could miss an entire turn at the restaurant of tables if that's the case. So it's a very difficult thing. So if you park at 6:05, you can stay until 10 or midnight if you wanted to. If you park at 6, or right before 6, then you're risking getting a citation if you don't move your car before 9. But if we moved it up to, say, 5 to 8, some of the downtown businesses thought that there were some negatives associated with that as well. So I don't think we found the perfect solution here, but I think more people were in favor of leaving it as it is for now and doing some more analysis in the study. And then if we need to change it, changing it then. Having the consistency for a longer period of time was seen as very positive.
That's really true. We were advised by the people at the meeting to not change from the hours that we were using right now, because that would just be one more confusion to the system, and so confusion to the people who were parking downtown.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is the motion that was made by Councillor Bennett. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. We have no unfinished business, and I direct your attention to the information reports that are listed on the agenda and that were in the council packet. Are there any questions or comments regarding those information report items? Councillor Dickey, I think, has one or two.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I was looking to see where it
okay.
was and where it landed,
Yeah,
and there's a
that's
lot
okay.
of information in reports, actually, so I'd recommend anyone who's interested take a look at the website, because there's a lot more than I think we'll probably be discussing. I just had a question about the Uber enforcement. There's the staff report over Uber enforcement. We had quite a lengthy discussion about Uber right before the holidays, and so I saw that we have an update in our packet, and one of the issues that we had discussed at that time was the fact that Uber had not been charging within our city, and that's kind of the thing that would push them over to being a vehicle for hire, and then subsequently the staff report said that they have been charging, or they've had some sort of evidence that they're charging for their rides. So I just was hoping that staff could just sort of just briefly explain what's happening. And part of the reason why I'm asking this and would love to have you just sort of explain here in the meeting is a couple of neighborhood association meetings I've been to, they've had a lot of questions about that. They want to know what they're doing, what Uber's doing, and they're concerned about public safety. So I thought it would be great if you would be willing to explain a little bit about where we are in the status with that and where we are moving forward.
Great. Yes, we'd be happy to do that. And I'm going to ask Brady Rogers to come up and give you an update on where we are with the enforcement. In addition to the enforcement action that we're taking, we're also continuing to work with representatives from the company as well as traditional taxi cab companies to look at our existing code to see if there are some things that we could do to bring it up to a more modern state. But at the same time, we do have this enforcement action. So Brady, if you'd please brief us on that.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Councilors. My name is Brady Rogers. I'm your Neighborhood Enhancement Division Administrator. Uber began operation in Salem in July of 2014. At the time, they were not charging for rides. We have been keeping our eye on the company and their activities over this time. I'm couching my language a little bit because it's an ongoing case, and I hate to play too many cards before the hearing on March 11th. I will say, though, that we obtained incontrovertible evidence that they are charging for rides in the first week of December of 2014. And at that time, we issued the enforcement order requiring them to obtain a vehicle for hire operator's license. There are some outstanding issues that we're trying to come to agreement on, predominantly the licensing itself of both the company and the drivers, the background checks, which we feel are important, that are done by the City of Salem, and some actual insurance, some actual proof of insurance. They have a lot of documentation, a lot of papers that say they have insurance. We've never been provided with anything concrete. So there you have it. They've appealed the order, and the appeal hearing is set for March 11th of this year.
All right. Okay. Councilor McCoy.
I have a question. This comes from just I get a lot of stuff across my desk. The state of California, and I'm asking if we have something similar. They have a requirement that the state check the accuracy of how they're, in other words, if you're a taxi cab, you're checking the accuracy of the meter to make sure that it's calculating, the right rates. And in this case, Uber's is a different technology that basically they've, again, refused to give to California, the information they need. So the state of California is finding them God knows how much a day because they're refusing to comply with that order to say, is this accurate or not? Because all it is, you sign up, get in the car, and you get a bill on your credit card. They have no meter to see what they cost, what they charge. They'll tell them what they might charge them, but it's not. It's definitely a whole different deal here. So is that something that would apply here or not?
Well, in actuality, the Uber app will tell you there's 4 components to their charge. There's a base fee, which at present is
$3 for the ride here in Salem. There's a base per mile fee, which I believe is $1.75 per mile. Then they charge you for time, so I think it's another 75 cents per minute. And then on top of that, there's a $1 safe ride fee, which we theorize goes to offset the cost of their insurance. That's the best we've come up with. So you know these factors before you get in the ride, and then you are provided at the end of your ride with some evidence that of how your final calculation has come to. All things being equal, the rates that are presently set here in Salem are a little bit higher than traditional taxi cab companies, but they're in the ballpark. It's not extraordinarily different.
And that would be for their lowest level ride?
Well, they do have the surge pricing that they've talked about. To my knowledge, that has not come into play in Salem at this time.
Is that on the tandem bike?
I believe that our city attorney has a comment.
Just
that he
to
wants
add to
make.
what Mr. Rogers said, the Salem Revised Code, Chapter 30, does have a requirement that they calibrate their taxi meters, and we have them do that.
Councilor Benars and then Councilor Benjamin.
Brady, thanks for being here tonight. Can you give me a rough idea of what the licensing through the city would cost? I'm trying to get an idea of how big of a bill is it to Uber at this end?
I think it's about $55.
And the background check?
That's included.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
We're not talking big dollars here.
No. For each driver.
Yeah, but
No, it's and Salem, you know, believe me, Salem is joining a long line of jurisdictions, both nationally and internationally, that is engaged in discussions with Uber about being regulated. And their business model is very different, and it's the principle for them. It's not about the $55, in our case, the $55. It's they don't believe they should be regulated. They don't believe they are a vehicle for hire. So we're quite a ways apart as far as where we're coming at this thing. We think we can probably agree on some things, but when we eventually do come to council, which at this point we project will be in March, we'll probably give you a report that says we agree with Uber on these things and we have come to agree to disagree on these things.
Thank you.
Councilor Benjamin.
I don't know. It was years ago since I called a cab. I haven't done it recently, but anytime I've ever called for a cab, they said it'll be about 45 minutes to an hour. And I was like, well, you know, why would it take so long? I mean, it was Portland at the time, so it was a pretty big place. But understanding that they have the meters there to require that meters be checked so the consumer doesn't get ripped off. The cabbie doesn't take a side turn somewhere when nobody's looking and say, oh yeah, there's traffic over there, whatever. But now in this day and age, we have satellites and GPS and stuff like that that's fairly accurate. So this business model with Uber kind of intrigued me, and hearing a lot of discussion over the radio about how people would call a cab, and they said it'd be 45 minutes out. Well, they'd wait for it, and then all of a sudden, an hour later, they get a call. Did you still need that cab from the cab company? You say, well, no, not now, because I just called Uber, and they had somebody there in 15 minutes. So I'd like to see a way that an option can be given to the citizens in Salem for a ride. The cab service is great. We're regulating it, making it safe for the consumer. But when you really get down to it, and that person needs a ride, they can either hitchhike, they can take a cab, they can ask a friend. Why don't we do Uber too? From what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but they have very high standards as well. They do a lot of background check, insurance. They require a vehicle to be a certain year. They have to take it in and have it 21-point inspection to make sure it's safe. Is that true?
No. Not entirely.
Okay.
I'm going to step in here for just a moment, being careful that we're not starting to deliberate, because this is an issue that is going to be coming to the council. So I don't mean to be rude, but I want to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. All right, okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions on information reports? I think there was one on
Mr.
H. Yes. Councillor Nanki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, we discussed this at pre-council, and I've talked to Councillor Dickey about it as well in regarding the ordinance to prohibit smoking on city-owned properties. And in reading the staff report, it basically says staff is going to go out and do this public outreach, and I'd asked if we had any costs or amount of time that would be involved to do that, knowing we have 4 new councilors as well, and it was suggested that a motion be put on the floor to have staff come back with costs and the extent of that public outreach, because there's some confusion even in talking to staff, how significant that outreach actually is. Then possibly a recommendation for what city manager wants her employees to be restricted to or not. So,
Yes, if there was that motion, we could bring something back for the next council meeting.
All right, does that answer your question? Councillor Dickey.
Thank you. Actually, I'm not going to make a motion just yet. I was hoping that staff could kind of explain if they have some idea right now of what they're going to do, or they want to come back with a staff report. I'd like to kind of hear, because it's been a while since we've had that conversation. Love to know
Mr.
what
Bechtel.
your thoughts are for the outreach, and if you have some idea of the cost of that or what would be involved.
Mark Bechtel, Parks and Transportation Services Manager. And certainly we can come back with a report to council if that's what the council desires. But our intention was to undertake a modest public involvement process as far as going to neighborhood associations if invited, getting the word out to the chairs, going to the neighborhood chairs meeting in April, putting the word out over the city's internet and social media capabilities, looking at possibly doing a Survey Monkey, which is relatively low cost. When we did this related effort several years ago, we did post signs in the parks, which did not cost much. This is all management level work. It's not field staff work, so it is a relatively modest cost for time and material.
All right, are there further questions? All right, are we done looking at information reports? Yes, Councilor
actually, I would go ahead and make that motion to have staff bring back cost and an estimate in time to perform that, especially if we're going out to, well, and I shouldn't say anything more without a second.
Second. All right, thank you.
Very nicely
It's
done.
been moved by Councilor Nanki and seconded by Councilor Benars.
And if that's a pretty quick turnaround report, I think that'll kind of tell us where we're going on the issue in its entirety, rather than having staff go out and do pointless work or not do enough in certain areas. Because I know there was several pieces in the report that had degradations or different little buckets. So it'd be nice to, if we are going to go forward, to at least identify some path.
Outreach. All right. We can
All
do
right,
that.
so it's been moved by Councilor Nanki and seconded by Councilor Benars to ask, or was it Councilor Dickey? I'm sorry. It was Councilor Benars to ask staff to come back with further information and also an estimate of cost. Correct? All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion, how many nays? Let me see. 3, okay, Councilor Bennett, Councilor Anderson, and Councilor Dickey voting no. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions about information reports? All right, now we're moving on to ordinances. For the first reading, would the city recorder please introduce the first reading of 8.1A?
Ordinance Bill Number 215, declaring and proclaiming certain territory located at 4911 and 4922 Swiggle Road Northeast, annexed into the City of Salem, prescribing a Salem Area Comprehensive Plan Map designation, prescribing East Lancaster Neighborhood Plan Map designation, prescribing zoning, and withdrawing the territory from the Marion County Fire District Number 1.
All right, thank you. Councillor Benjamin, do you have a motion on this item? Or Councillor Nanke, do you have the motion?
Well, I would just like to inform the new counselors, in the event there's an ordinance or something that's typically inside of your ward, we defer, since it is in your ward, to allow you to make either staff recommendation, which is included with the ordinance, or a modification thereof. So most of the time it's as simple as saying staff recommendation, unless of course you have something that you want to add or delete or make comment on.
I'll move to staff recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Benjamin and seconded by Councillor McCoy to move staff recommendation. Is there discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. The next ordinance is 8.1B, which is Ordinance Bill Number 315. Would the recorder please introduce that one?
Ordinance Bill Number 315, declaring and proclaiming certain territory located at 1910 and 1930 Wallace Road Northwest, annexed to the City of Salem, prescribing zoning, and withdrawing the territory from the Salem Suburban Rural Fire Protection District.
Thank you. Is there a motion from Councillor Lewis?
Yes, I move staff recommendation.
Second. It's been moved by Councillor Lewis and seconded by Councillor Benars to move staff recommendation. Is there discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. And our third ordinance is 8.1C. Would the recorder please introduce Ordinance Bill Number 415?
Ordinance Bill Number 415, relating to the changing of the composition of the Housing and Urban Development Advisory Commission, amending SRC 20G.010.
All right. Councillor Nanke, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would move staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Nanke and seconded by Councillor Bednarz to move staff recommendation. Is there discussion?
If I could just make a quick comment, and the issue here was involvement with the Housing Authority Commission as well as planning commissioners being involved in this committee. We just upped Planning Commission to 9, which could still potentially give us more opportunity for a planning commissioner to elect to sit on that, but the additions of at-large members would not preclude a planning commissioner as well. So again, to give us the most flexibility, I think it was a good recommendation.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. We have no second readings. There is an individual who signed up for public comment, Mary Harp, but I don't see her any longer in the audience. Is that correct? Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. All right. Mary Harp, would you please go to the podium? You have 3 minutes. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council members. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I came here tonight to kind of give you an update on Church Street Manor. Some of you are aware of the scenario, some of you are not. Back in May of 2014, my neighbors and I came to the City Council and asked that they reverse the decision made by the Planning Commission. Church Street Manor had been operating as a room and board illegally. We were having a lot of problems. October 1st was the final closing. Everyone was out. Things have gone pretty good. I would say that over the last 6 months, our neighborhood has been the most well-protected neighborhood. We've had the city police, we've had code enforcement, fire, you name it. Only a couple of problems. Of course, we still have no property manager, no property owner involvement. Still not doing anything. Building code enforcement has done an excellent job of following through. The other thing is we've eliminated some parking problems on Johnson Street to Maple Street, southeast corner. Johnson is now a no parking area, so we don't have the cars parking there. We don't have the suspicious activity, no drugs. What else can I tell you? We do have an issue, though, that because the owner does not have a TLC on file, the police are not willing to do anything as far as if they catch someone on the property. So we are asking for help with that. And I think that kind of covers it. I did hear a rumor that the owner has filed or is filing bankruptcy. So we don't know what's going to happen with the property. 5 of my neighbors, including myself, all have TLCs on file with the city. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I know Councilor Dickey has a question. I have a quick question. So has the premises been totally vacated by the renters?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
October 6th was the last tenant.
I see. Okay, so it's totally a vacant property now.
Correct. It's been boarded up too.
I see. Okay, great. I want to say how much I appreciate you and your neighbors coming to us originally and following up and coming to us tonight. I know it has not been easy, and I appreciate your comments in support of staff too. We always appreciate that. Councilor Dickey, I think, has a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Mary, for coming down and providing that update. I know I was at the last Highland neighborhood meeting, and you and some of your neighbors were sharing some of the concerns of things that have happened since the property has been vacated and boarded up, and still having issues with people breaking in, pipes breaking and flooding and that kind of thing. And you had nothing but good things to say about our code enforcement. And I have been in communication with Brady Rogers, our code enforcement our neighborhood enhancement division director, about the issues that are ongoing, and I know that they are carefully monitoring that. As well as at the meeting, we had our Deputy Chief Police, Ferreras, was there, and so he was able to hear what some of those concerns were. So I hope, as with some of other properties like this that we've had, by bringing in various departments, we can kind of put our collective heads together and, get this issue resolved. So appreciate you continuing to let us know if there are continuing problems or whatever, because we need to get this taken care of. It's been going on far too long.
Yes.
All right. Councilor Nanke.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for letting us know what's going on as a follow-up, and for staying here for a significant amount of time as well. And I know at times we've actually allowed folks to speak on the front end if people don't abuse it massively and come and speak. So
yes,
just
when we know that, so
keep our eye out on that. So just to throw that out for the public, that's actually not just some random piece, but if it's applicable to decisions or future decisions in general as well.
All right.
So
Thank you very much.
Can I just say one other thing?
Yes, certainly.
Because of my involvement in the Church Street Manor scenario, I've now become the secretary for the Highland Neighborhood Association. So I'm only here on our neighbors, not for the association.
And I would recommend looking at those 29 vacancies on boards and commissions.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your service to that as well. That's great. All right, we have no further business to come before this body, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.